movie.
Hey there, and welcome to episode number 52 of Killer POV.
Bum, 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 bum. Ha, 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 ha.
It's terrible. No.
Okay. Hey, but we tried.
Elric says we have to sing our names.
I think we should sing our names.
You go first then.
I'll sing Rebekah
From?
McKendry. Fangoria.
See, it's not as fun when
No, it's not as fun.
it wasn't as
Elric
good an
Kane.
idea. It sounded good in your head.
Inside horror.
Some dude.
Right.
Graham Skipper, some drunk.
Oh, man.
I just wandered in off the street.
He should get like a
Nice.
death metal. Dramskapa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I
sounds
can't do
good.
it, but
Rocky
is a man. Rocky is a man.
that's better.
All right,
I like
so
it.
hopefully you know who we are at this point.
We are.
But,
We're all here.
I don't think they understood any of that, guys.
no.
There is
no.
subtext to this conversation. Maybe explain that first.
Oh, okay. Well, our guest today is Graham Skipper.
Yes,
Hello,
hello.
One
I'm
of our-
excited to be here.
Yes,
Who is
one
in a
of-
musical called Almost Human.
It-
It's a musical about abduction.
He's in a movie that you could see right now on VOD called Almost Human. We had the director and the star on a few months ago.
Yeah.
But I think we all first met Graham because he played Herbert West in Re-Animator the musical,
Doctor.
Yes.
and he's got
Actually, he never finished his
Oh, he
degree.
didn't. You're right. So he's
he
not
was in
Doctor
the
Who.
middle
He's not
of
yet
his
a doctor.
doctorate,
Right. That's
so.
actually a good point.
and he has a lovely singing voice, which I was reminded of at karaoke when you
Ooh,
got up and
yes.
did Sticks, and I'm like, shit, that's right. He's
Wait,
in a musical.
You went to
He's good.
karaoke
Uh-huh.
and I missed it.
Yeah.
God damn it.
That's a good
Next
one.
time.
It was a good one. So I don't know. I thought it'd be fun. You know, we've never had a chance to tackle. There's been a lot of horror musicals, like Evil Dead got the treatment, Re-Animator, Carrie, and quite a few others that we'll talk about.
And film musicals, too.
Yeah,
With
because
film
my
musicals.
focus, I went with film musicals, and then I also have a list of like music videos that
Yes.
were just really scary.
We just thought we'd make this a music themed episode about like musical adaptations, musicals, horror musical films, etc., and kind of go from there.
And I have some really obscure ones that I don't think people have heard of, but I have to say they really kick ass and are crazy. One's even a porn.
Well,
Yeah.
Porn musical.
not
We'll
surprised.
get
Makes everything
there.
better.
We'll get there.
We
We'll
still
get
have
there.
movies to talk about.
Well,
Yeah.
before we do, we have a ton of new stuff to get to before we do the movies. I think the most pressing is to all the Gwar fans out there. Unfortunately, the lead singer David Brockie had passed away. Our own Rebekah McKendry here just informed us 10 minutes ago that she directed a couple of Gwar videos, which I had no idea about.
I attended school in Richmond, and so I knew the Gwar guys really well, still do. And I ended up working with them at Fangoria a lot because they attended all of our conventions and
Right.
everything. And I shot and directed Zombies March, which they did off of Bloody Pit of Horror, which came out in, I guess, about 2009, 2010. And yeah, so I love Dave Brockie. It was so sad to hear about that on Sunday.
Yeah, and very, very unexpected. And actually, it's funny because Monsterpalooza is coming up this weekend. And last year for Monsterpalooza, I got to host a panel for Holliston, and both Holliston and Hatchet 3. So beforehand, I got to kind of meet the crew from both, the movie and the show. And I think it was, I think Adam brought me over and introduced me to this guy, David, that I had no idea who he was, but it's a very, very sweet, nice guy. And I forgot until we got on stage, and I was like, what happened to that guy they introduced me to? Because I didn't know what he looked like without the Gwar costume and everything.
Odorous Orungus.
Yeah, so he came out as Odorous, sat next to me on stage, started a lot of trouble, and he had this like giant dong thing hanging out.
That would be the cuttlefish of Cthulhu.
Yeah, and he made fun of me for staring at it on stage in front of the whole audience. So
I have an obituary on him coming up on Fango in a couple of days, but I just have to say that Dave Brockie, I loved him so dearly because he had this wonderful persona that he had in his character, Odorous Orungus, but then behind the mask, he was such a brilliant artist. And most people don't even pay much attention to that just because they're caught up in the gore that they, what they're known for is their gory stage show. But he was such a fantastic artist and intelligent and a historian and just obsessive about politics and football and everything. He was a wonderful guy.
Yeah. So
I know him from Beavis and Butthead. I think Guar were in one episode, and I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
That's all I'd ever even heard of Guar coming from New Zealand. Never even heard
Yeah,
a beat of
that's
music.
interesting.
The first time I probably ever saw him was on Holliston, but my memory of them was a giant worm thing. And I think it was in Beavis and Butthead, and this giant worm thing coming on in the background.
That is
and
probably
eating
the
people.
world maggot, which I was eaten by in their last LA show. I got to be a victim on stage.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's always sad to hear.
Yeah, so...
Too many people this year. I feel like too many young, you'll read it's like 45, 50-year-olds dying or very talented people.
Yeah.
So our condolences to the family, and of course to the movie Crip guys, Joe and Adam, because I know they were very close with them, and they did Holliston. So, our feelings are out there for you guys, and it's terrible. What are you gonna do? So. All right, well, let's move to slightly happier news now. I think it's official. I think if you're in the Dallas, Texas area...
Fuck yeah.
Oh, yeah, we didn't have the chance to talk about it.
You're going to get to meet Killer POV.
I just got you guys plane confirmations while I was waiting here. So, Killer POV is going to be at Texas Frightmare.
Yes, pending that Elric doesn't become a complete diva.
I'll go anywhere free. Anywhere free. I'll go anywhere free.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Elric's going to be a diva. We didn't get him first class.
Yeah.
You're going to have to bunk with Rob.
That's not like bunking with Rob.
Hey now. So that's what, May 2nd through the 4th, Dallas, Texas Frightmare Convention. I don't know. We'll give you more details as it gets closer.
We should have a couple of events going on there that involve Killer POV.
Hoping to talk one of our big listeners on the show into becoming a Canadian filmmaker. It's a long shot. But there's a certain famous horror Canadian filmmaker who I would dream of having a show.
And he listens to the show?
No, of course not. But hey, you never know. You never know. But if he's out there and if he is listening, you're going to come to Killer POV.
I've never met Chris Alexander. I'm pretty stoked to meet him because he's going to be there too.
He's going to be there too. So we'll definitely have to.
He can be on the show too. But that's not who I'm sending these vibes out to.
Oh, come on.
Okay.
No, what's weird is I've worked with Chris for like 6 years now. Since he came on at Fango, I was there a couple of years before him, and then he came on board. And that entire time, I've only been in person with him once. And the only reason was because we had his film and my film both played the same festival. So we were both like, let's just go so we could hang out for a night. And it's the only time I've ever met him in person.
That's right. Yeah, Fango's kind of spread out, I guess, now.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, all over the place. Real quick announcement. This upcoming April marks the, believe it or not, 10-year anniversary of Icons of Fright.
Nice.
Seriously?
Launched Icons of Fright.
Oh, wait, you mean Rondo nominated?
That's true.
Icons of Fright.
On
Congratulations.
the Rondo nominated
Rob.
Killer POV.
That's
And I
right.
assume you're Rondo nominated for something. Almost Human is probably a write-in nomination.
I would
It's a write-in nomination.
I'd be writing it in.
Graham should be nominated for lots of things. But yeah, so it's our 10th anniversary. And by the time this airs, we're planning, Jerry Smith is coming back to Icons of Fright to kind of take over editor-in-chief duties again, which
cool.
we're very excited about.
Is that breaking news? Or
That's breaking news. But
is he going to keep doing his thing, Martyr Cycle?
I think he's just coming back full-time to Icons, although he's welcome to contribute there on the other side for non-horror stuff.
We might be using him for a few things at Fango as
And
well.
that's true. That's true. I recommended him for that. We got a lot of. We're going to celebrate all of April on Icons of Fright. We've been kind of collecting content from pretty much anybody and everybody that's contributed over the last 10 years. Anybody that wants to come in and chime in. So even though it hasn't been as active as it used to be, I think we're going to try to make April really special. So hit iconsofright.com. Thank you.
Nice.
Well, thanks for joining us. We love doing the show every week. Next week we'll actually do a show with content that isn't a plug. No, I'm just kidding.
Elric.
There is other stuff going on.
Yeah. So movies. What has everyone seen? I've only seen one thing.
What'd you see?
I went to the New Beverly last night because they were doing a double feature, an Ozploitation double feature of Strange Behavior, aka Dead Kids, with Patrick.
Very strange.
Yes.
I love Patrick. I've seen Patrick before. Richard Franklin directed, the director of Psycho 2, but I'd never seen Strange Behavior before.
It's a weird movie.
It's a weird movie. Yeah. I don't know if it's a good movie, but
that's
it's
how
weird.
I feel about it.
I would not have enjoyed it if I sat home and watched it by myself. But as an audience pitcher, it worked really great, and it was worth it to hear an entire crowd lose it during the dance sequence. You will know what I'm talking about when you see the movie. There's an unbelievable dance sequence where all the characters are dressed like 60s television characters. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of an odd Batman and Robin kind of swaying in synchronicity.
Yeah, make sure you watch Not Quite Hollywood. We've talked about it once before, but it really is, to me, the most entertaining documentary about film I've ever seen.
Love it. Yeah.
It's just so fun. The spirit is incredible. And it'll turn you onto a lot of really interesting movies, like, Turkey Shoot or things that, directors you might not have found. Because Franklin's not an Aussie, right? Richard Franklin.
Yeah, no, he is.
Is he an Aussie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
did he do Road Games?
He did Road Games. He did Patrick.
For some reason, I thought because a lot of Brits and Americans were actually directing a lot of those films. A lot of them weren't actually Aussie directors.
No, I'm pretty sure he was originally Aussie.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And Dennis Hopper. The Dennis Hopper stories are worth it.
Oh my God, amazing. Yeah.
That he died.
Good stuff.
Actually died during one of the takes. And they had to bring him back to life on screen.
Yeah, that's a wild one. So yeah, Not Quite Hollywood is actually a really good barometer into if you're going to like Ozploitation stuff, because they give you a lot of little bits.
Yeah, and then it was cool. It was a big tax shelter, a big tax loophole where it's not true. Like I had a teacher once and he told me, I basically ruined it for everyone because I went there and kind of exploited the system. And he's like, there was some projects that were getting 100% of their money back. There was ways that basically you were not spending any money to make a movie. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy stories down there, but the rules weren't being followed.
Yeah.
The Hollywood rules of shooting and etiquette were not being. So it's pretty, worth your time.
Yeah. So that's all I saw.
But you like seeing Patrick, the remake, no one's seen yet.
No,
right?
no, I'm dying to see it. And
we have reviews of it up on Fango.
The trailer to that, the problem, I mean, it looked interesting. I'm curious to see it, but it looked like it was less focused on Patrick.
It looked more
about a nurse.
Yeah, it looked a lot more
and I like
sci-fi.
Shiny.
Shini's
from
cool.
Your next, so I want to check it out for sure.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, I just realized that without thinking about it, that is the director of Not Quite Hollywood.
Not Quite Hollywood, yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that when we were talking about it, so that's weird.
Yeah.
Mark Hartley.
Yeah.
Cool. There you go. Everything comes full circle here. I have an Australian film. I had three things to talk about. The Aussie one's third, but if you want to go.
Yeah, first. I didn't see much this week. What I did is I binged watched more Supernatural because I keep trying to push myself to the end of the season. I know.
Tap that vein.
And what I've discovered is I'm just chasing the dragon now because I'm on season 9, and no matter what I do, it's never going to be as good as season 5. And
which one? Season 5, just so I remember.
Season 5, it was the Apocalypse one. But they had a lot of standalone episodes as well, and it was just a really clean, really strong season. It ended with the one where Chuck was telling the story about the car and how the car was made. And that was it was kind of just this climax of beautiful television, and everything's gone downhill. And we went through the whole Leviathan things and then the Man of Letters, and I don't give a shit about it now. And it's so sad. I should have.
The more biblical it went, the less.
I think that's as far as I got was season 5, but it was planned initially just as a 5-year run. That's why.
See, that episode that I said is like the pinnacle of beautiful television. The one where Chuck's discussing, he frames the whole thing as the history of the car, and then involves the boys in it through the history of the car.
Right.
It is like the most beautiful finale ever. And then the show keeps going. And so, it has become like a heroin addiction for me where I'm like seeing it through the end, but it's no longer joyful in any way. And I'm not enjoying it.
It's still on, right?
It's just, I have to keep doing it. Yeah, it's still going.
I think somebody told me that it got better recently again.
I've heard
and
that
some of these
too.
shows, it does happen. They go through a couple seasons of down.
Yeah, I mean, like Community, which is not horror, but I mean, it definitely, like the prior 2 seasons to this, I had not enjoyed, but this season's been awesome.
Okay.
So it can happen. So I'm still chugging my way through it, but man, it's just become a slog.
And you're a
to get
Sam
through
or a
these
Dean
things.
person?
I'm more of a Sam person.
That's just baffling to me.
Dean? You like Dean?
Oh, yeah. I want to be Dean.
I want to combine the two because Sam is definitely the hotter one to look at, but I like Dean's personality better because he's more into cars.
Han Solo.
He's much more of my taste in music with the AC/DC classic rock.
You think
thing.
Sam's better looking than Dean?
Sam's better
That's
looking
fascinating
than
to
Dean.
me. I think Dean is like this mega stud guy, and Sam just looks like kind of a Boy Scout to me.
Oh, I think it's the hair. I love Sam's hair. But they make fun of it in this season. They keep talking about how he needs mousse. So
see, I've never actually seen the show. So when I hear this, I think of Dean Stockwell and Sam from Quantum Leap, and I just think,
again, I
that's
go
who we were
Sam
discussing.
from Quantum Leap.
Definitely more of a Dean person.
Good choice. Good choice.
So that's all I've done this week is binge watch season 9.
Look at you going all hardcore.
There's a convention coming up. There's a supernatural convention coming up in Burbank. And it's one of these things where I'm like, do I go just because I can now walk around and go, I get that. I get this joke. Or is it just sad?
Before you go, I think Brian Collins wrote a report from one, and it was sad.
See, that's what I talked to Andrew about it, because Andrew went to one, and he was like, don't go, Bekah. It's just sad.
It might depress you.
I want you to go. I want you
to go report back to us.
It may have been buzz, but somebody was like, don't go. It's sad. But I mean, I go to Star Trek conventions, and I have the greatest time of my life, and they're kind of sad too. Well, moments of them. But yeah, I'm anxious to see.
I love the supernatural episode that takes place at a convention where they got super meta on the show.
I think that's season 6, but that is one of the best episodes. It's really, really good, where they go to a convention about them. It's hilarious.
The best thing, I honestly, one of the best episodes of anything I've ever seen was an episode of Supernatural where it was the one where you pulled the herpy question, where they basically entered television. These two characters entered TV and they're stuck. Somebody's playing a trick on them and they're stuck in commercials.
I remember that. Yeah, that was good.
And it ends with one of them doing a herpes commercial and he can't stop himself. He just has to keep uttering the word. But this thing's so clever about it.
It is. I still love the one where they're stuck on the film set and they're shooting a film about them. But they're working as PAs on it, and it's hilarious. So
it's pretty fun. There's a lot of clever stuff in that show.
I think that's why when a show goes angels and devil, angels coming down with big white wings, that's when I'm like, well, really? You can be that creative about having characters, playing themselves in a movie, but then you just pull from the same old sources. That's disappointing to me. That's when I want something different.
It's getting to what I'll call like a Buffy point where they've each died like 3 times. When you keep killing them and they keep coming back, what can you do at this point? Like, that's what pissed me off at Buffy by the end. I was like, she's died like 3 times, guys. You've hit that nail a bunch. So
I'm at my Buffy point too. I've died 3 times today alone.
Just today on the way here.
All right, I'll try to talk quick. One of our listeners and good friend, Dick Gruner, handed me a film a couple weeks ago because we plugged the battery so hard for so long and made him a major fan of that. He saw an independent film that he saw on the circuit at a film festival, and he said he was like one of the only people in the theater, and the director gave him a thing. It was a film called Found, with a dot at the end, by Scott Shermer, based on a novel by a guy called Todd Rigney, who also, I think, is a major writer for like one of the Hollywood sites, not Deadline, but something like that. Anyway, it's Indiana. I think it was made for like $10,000. And when he handed it to me, he said, "Oh, this is like Terrence Malick if he made a horror film." I was like, "Well, okay." And so he gave it to the right guy. But I wouldn't say I fell in love with the film completely, but it was really interesting. And it kind of goes back to my interest in like regional horror, like and Almost Human was too. A film made in a place with local people. Something that, largely missing. People are often trying to hide the geography of their film, or if they're in LA, it's a non-geography. But it's basically a young kid, like a 9-year-old or 10-year-old, who's obsessed by horror. So I think it's got popcorn poster on the wall. He's obsessed by it, and he discovers his older brother is a serial killer, and he finds a head in a bag in his closet, and it's very grim. It's a movie that starts kind of with like Malick shots of sunlight coming through trees and voiceover, and then at about the halfway point they watch a VHS, an unlabeled VHS, and it's so gnarly. I mean, up until then nothing really horrific's happened.
Right.
It's so rough that I'm pretty seasoned with watching this stuff. I was like, well, this is pretty extreme. But it's characters watching the extremity, and it really was effective. When the film worked, it really, really worked. And the ending is really strong. The last image is like kind of horrific. But it was a very simple movie. What I would, and this is just a recommendation to anyone making independent film, is the kids' performances are like they're knocking it out of the park. They're, whether they're amateurs or not, they're really believable. What I've noticed in a lot of, regionally made films or just independent films is often the adult characters are terrible and like not believable whatsoever. And I always think it's probably because they're going to regional theater going, hey, I need a 60-year-old guy to act in my film, rather than finding someone who maybe is the right person for a role.
Yeah.
And so like there's the parent characters. Anytime those scenes or teachers, you're kind of out of the movie for a few minutes, but when it's the kids and the actual story, so, and you cut a wide berth for that because it's an independent film, and I don't care, but it's more just an observation, I think. Really interesting film, and I think he thought that it was going to get some sort of distribution, but I really would. I'd call it 1 part Malick, 2 part Dahmer. You know, it's very not like the film, but like the kind of crimes and just it's kind of grisly.
So
definitely,
it's not It's not out there right now.
No,
or?
I think I have a disc that the director gave Dick because he was sitting in the audience. But I think I think you could look it up. I do believe I saw the director's name on a Michael Biehn, Jennifer Blanc project called a Elevator thing. Just seeing if Rebekah's listening, we won't talk about it on air. But I did see his name attached, so he might be making something else.
Okay.
But anyway, I think people should, if you get a chance, look it up. It's probably on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's called Found and It's Not Found Footage. It's shot, with artistry for no budget. Like they're trying to achieve that poetic feeling.
Right.
But when the gore stuff happens, it goes there. It's interesting.
That's a fun, interesting premise.
Well, we were sent 2 movies that we have to watch. These were sent in by one of our fans who said that we needed to check this filmmaker out. The filmmaker's name is Adam Albrandt, and they were sent in by the guys from the Exercast in West Virginia,
Oh, cool.
who
Yeah,
I
you know
love
what?
dearly.
Yeah, you're carrying, which one is that, Crossbear?
I've got Crossbear in the Cemetery.
I actually met an actor, I forget his name now, I'm sorry. I met one of the actors that's in all this guy's movies. At the
Isaac
Hyena
Williams?
Wes Craven thing.
Really?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of intrigued because they were sent in by a fan who said, you guys really need to pay attention to this guy's work.
Cool.
And they look really gory.
Yeah, I've seen the trailer to Crossbear and it looked pretty neat.
Cool. So I'm going to be
And we do want
checking
more
these
of the
out this
stuff. We
weekend.
just apologize if we don't get things as quickly as possible. Same with giveaways.
Yeah.
I've had J. Michael Kober. I've had your giveaway. Signed copy of Night of the Demons by Kevin Tenney. It's in my hand.
We're staring at it and we're taking it away from Elric.
I am not
and
the
we
person.
are going to mail it. Because
I'm not the one you
I'm
want
going
to do
be mailing
giveaways.
it to you because Elric is just not
I'm
good
a black
at getting
vortex.
to the post office.
But I have one more child than any of you. And 2 more than you. So I'm allowed to. Anyway, another film I saw, which I don't know, a lot of people have been seeing it recently, I guess. And it was really impressive. Most of it is In Fear.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I have that at home. I haven't seen
I have it too. I haven't watched
Jeremy
it yet.
Lovering, who I looked him up, and it's an Irish film, but he did one of the most recent episodes of the Sherlock Holmes show, which I love, with Benedict Cumberbatch. What I'd say about it is, I'm not going to go spoilers. It's very thin, so there's not much I can say. It's basically a road trip. A young couple who don't know each other that well, they've only been dating for about 2 weeks, are going to go to this Irish music fest, and they basically keep getting lost on the route that they're going to take this detour. And it's really about what's not being said between the 2 characters. They're not always telling each other the whole truth. And then a horror element starts and it becomes kind of cat and mousey. It's incredibly tense. And the thing, kind of when I talk about Night of the Comet before, it's the thing about horror we've lost largely in a lot of films is, that we give a shit about who I'm watching. And 90% of the time, it's just a couple of people who I know they're victims. They might as well just have victim written on their head. They have no character. You don't care. They're not empathetic. These characters from the first frame, you start to like them, and you like them. Really, they become characters you really kind of get invested in. What I would say is it doesn't end, and without talking about ending, it just kind of, I would say it kind of fizzles a little bit, or it just doesn't maybe go as far as you would like it to, but it's still really worth watching, I think. It's when it comes to payoff, it depends what you're looking for.
I thought I heard that a lot of that movie was improvised.
Yeah,
Does
well,
that
basically,
sound right?
no, what's interesting is, and I still couldn't tell you 100% about certain character motivations, but it never feels like a mumblecore. They're never grasping for words. It's not improvised in that sense. I think what I heard is that the director did not tell the actors exactly who they were going to be in the narrative. If they were going to be good, bad, what would happen. And so because of that, there's times where you're not quite sure because of what's not being said. But it's not like a finger to them. It's never like that. I hate that kind of stuff.
Similar in concept to Dead End. I think that's the name of it.
That's the
it's
one
a
it gets
Ray
compared
Wise
to.
movie?
Yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
really
really
liked
fun
that
movie.
one.
That film's a little more surreal. This is pretty straight, like that's the thing, but it's tense, and I think it's worth watching if you're interested in how you can just take 2 characters, make us care very quickly, and put them in a tense situation. I think on that level, it's a success. And it's fun. I think Irish horror is coming along, because I'm a huge Citadel fan, and
Grabbers was great.
Yeah, Grabbers was really fun.
To see Grabbers.
Yeah, you'll like
Sounds
Grabbers.
I think it's on
You're in
Netflix
Grabbers, I'm
instant.
sure. Grabbers is made
in
for your
Grabbers.
sense
It
of
just
humor.
I was
Sounds
drunk
like
the
you
whole
were
time,
there.
though, so.
And the last one is going to really go for you bastards, Wolf Creek 2. So,
I'm anxious to see what you said because I have to say,
you saw it?
I watched part of it. I turned it off.
You mad, you bastard. Okay. Wolf Creek is a very effective horror film, Wolf Creek.
I love the first one.
With a great performance by one of their leading comic characters, John Jarratt. He's a comedian in Australia, and he's never played a serious role in his whole career until Wolf Creek.
Until that.
And it's what's incredible about his performance in the first Wolf Creek is the pockets of silence where where the character clearly... It's almost like when you see the fracture point of a serial killer is the way where it just isn't processing things like normal. So he talks functionally and he's funny, and then suddenly he'll just look at you for a second, and it's almost like there's nothing there. Those moments to me were chilling in the first one. Unfortunately, in part 2, they go full Freddy. And they turn him into, he's basically what I realized actually a lot about my own horror taste by watching it is, because it has all the brutality. It's, it's pretty brilliantly made. It's a well-made movie. The gore scenes are incredibly gory. But I think I like horror movies to be Jaws. I like the villains to pop up here and there and scare me rather than be the front and center. It opens with him. Yeah, right. He's the character in this movie, and that could work if you're really clever and you can come up. But instead, it's just you damn cop, you pig, and he's killing people and making fun. Every line is a one-liner, and that's really tough. And
I made it about 15 minutes in.
Yeah, you saw probably the cops.
Congratulations that you made it the whole
way. Well, no, I mean,
through.
and it gets better. As a film, it's still, the biggest waste of this movie is that Greg McLean should have gone on to do other things. Yes. Because you're talking about a pretty talented director. Between that and Rogue, and the 5 years between each project. And I don't know if that's just because he hasn't been able to break out of Australia, but I believe he should be making a bigger movie here. But it's $7.5 million budget, which are just like, I don't know if they're meant to have that. Like, I don't know if a movie like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer or if Wolf Creek is meant to have that. I feel like it's meant to have $500,000 to $1 million and gritty. And so there's some big set pieces in there. In the middle, there is a really fun kind of, I want to say torture scene, but two people just talking over torture. And it's actually the one part of the film where it's actually almost worth watching just because it just feels like that's what they're trying to say with the movie. But there's a lot of just anti-Australian jokes that after a while you kind of go, yeah, I don't know if it would translate at all to America.
Right.
Like, I think Wolf Creek 1 can kind of play anywhere because it's more about the fear. This is really about the jokes. They're all foreign tourists, which I found interesting, all the victims. And so my guess...
He hates tourists or something.
Well, no, my guess, honestly, the character does, yeah. My guess is I'm guessing that this is a movie that some foreign investors, probably German, said I'm not even joking because they are German. I honestly believe they said this film was a hit in Germany. We'll pay you to make another one, big budget, but have German tourists in it and a lot of German language. Like there's a 15-minute chunk where two people are just speaking German, So and then Mick comes along and goes, "Ah, you bastards," and he kind of he deals.
Is
them.
it the tagline for the film?
Oh, you bastards! Actually, it's the C word, which I'm not kidding, is probably said about 150 times. But in New Zealand, Australia, it is very different.
Well, that's a PG movie.
It is a PG movie down there. It's expected. But I think some people will have a lot of fun, and it's definitely not a badly made movie at all. It's that realization that like, why do we have to take something that is effective and scary and turn it into a joke and turn it into something that is really not effective. There's no way to scare. You can't, if you're trying to make a tone, it is almost impossible to start with jokes and still scare us with that one character. Mm-hmm. Opening with somebody making jokes and then going, oh, maybe if he disappears for 10 minutes, we'll be scared when he comes back. No, now we're on his side.
Yeah,
he's my hero now.
He's the anti-hero of the movie.
It's tough. It's not impossible. People have achieved every rule can be broken. But I did read though afterwards after I was writing. He should be doing bigger projects. And at the end, I read he's got something with Kevin Bacon and Rhoda Mitchell, supernatural thriller. So I was like, okay,
good for him.
I'd just like to see him do something different.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So there you go. So we started with Australia. We ended with Australia.
Look at that.
And
our guest,
a lot of full circles.
Our guest tonight is from Melbourne. He hails. Now he is.
By which you mean New York.
Yes.
Actually,
g'day, Cobbler.
Texas.
Texas.
Oh, you're Texas.
Grew up in Fort Worth.
Let's bring everybody up to speed on who Graham is before we tackle.
Who am I?
Yeah, if you don't live in LA or New York, you might not know, right?
You don't actually exist.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're originally from Texas?
I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, and I was born in Burbank. And then when I was like 2, my parents moved back to Texas, where they were both from. So I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. So I'll have to give you guys some suggestions on places to eat and fun stuff to do when you're in Dallas. Then went to college in New York at Fordham University and lived there for about 10 years. And now I'm here.
Right on.
Yeah.
And you've always been a big horror fan, right? Because
oh yeah. I mean, I was talking to Rebekah about this before y'all got here, and I was always, the kid that would go into the Blockbuster, and my mom would say, okay, you can pick one video, and I would just go and scour the horror shelves and find whatever the, craziest looking thing was. I mean, that's how I remember vividly getting In the Mouth of Madness on VHS, because the cover looked just like totally crazy, and Sam Neill terrified me. And
how hard do you miss like not having that ability now to like peruse VHS copies?
It's so different. It's so different than like flipping through Netflix and like looking for something. And plus, when you're younger, there's that added element of, you're a little bit scared of what you might discover behind that.
And it's harder to find, right? Like now everything's just there.
Yeah.
It's all in front of you all the time.
I had to convince my mom to let me rent some of them, and now, it's,
right.
just play it. You just hit play.
I remember when my parents showed me The Exorcist for the first time, and it was, they had rented it, and I had it, and I remember I watched it, and I was like, I don't know, 13 or 14, and it fucking terrified me. It was awful, and I didn't sleep at all that night, and I just sat there with all the lights on in the living room, staring at this VHS tape, going, all right, I want to watch this again. I can conquer this. I can conquer this thing. And I had to wait till the sun came up, but that having that physical thing there, I don't know, it's different.
Yeah, it is. It's weird now.
Was that the first really scared the shit out of you movie you had, or?
Probably. I mean, I remember seeing Critters when I was really young. That creeped me out. Jaws 3D. I remember seeing that. My babysitter, when I don't know how old I was, my babysitter was watching it on the TV, and you saw that, that fish head like floating towards the screen.
Very
Never
slowly
forget
and
that.
awkwardly.
Yeah. But The Exorcist, that was the first one where I watched it, and afterwards I went, I want to find out why this is scary.
Yeah.
Why did this scare me? And
why do I like it?
And why do I like it?
That's the weird thing about all of us. You return to something that hurt you.
Yeah.
Like Creepshow hurt me as a child,
thing.
and I kept coming. Why did I come back?
Yeah. Why?
It's an infection of some kind.
Why was I excited?
Maybe it's that thing that Graham was saying, is like you want to defeat it. It's
conquer
like,
it.
There it is. Mm-hmm. If I can get through it again,
and then you enjoy
it.
it.
Won't be as bad.
Well, and I'll tell you, part of that for me, and it's what I think started me just really loving horror films and wanting to make horror films, was because you watch it and you're able to pick apart. How did William Friedkin like do that stuff? What is it about his artistry that made it scare me, which is so different? Why do I care so much more about this movie than when I watched The English Patient? Like what is it about this?
I always think
film?
With him, especially Friedkin, it's because he started as a documentarian. I look at the aesthetic that he uses in that film, and it literally looks like newsreel footage from a documentary. And then you look at his early stuff. It's same with Rampage and French Connection. They all have this. It changed later in his career. Like what's the one with the tree, making love to the tree?
Antichrist?
No. The one where the woman.
Friedkin,
yeah, that film that Mike loves. I love it too. It's The Guardian.
The Guardian.
But then it becomes a very glossy.
Making love with the tree.
Yeah, the Guardian. She's making love to the tree, and she's the keeper of tree souls or something. You've never seen that film?
Like a babysitter film.
She is. She's a babysitter.
Okay.
Well, she's a weird nanny who is trying to take the soul to sex. She's like a tree worshiper, and she's going to give the baby's soul to the tree from the parents. And she ends up making love with the tree in one scene, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
I'm cross-pollinating that with The Evil Dead. And it's no longer rape. She's making love
to a tree. That's why I said Antichrist. But the only thing I took with me from Guardian, and granted it's been a long time since I've seen it, is like evil babysitter. So, sorry.
British nanny. But yeah, it's I do think there's something, effective about making something look so real in a sense, especially back then. Same with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? It unfolds like you're watching something documental.
Yeah, it looks very news footage-y.
Without being found footage.
Right.
That's the difference, yeah.
Well, I mean, the reason I love Graham is because we had met for a little bit and we were friends, but then you were the only person I know that knew Dante Tomaselli's horror.
Yeah.
He knew horror in particular. And then it was just like, have you seen his other movies? And he's like, no.
No, I didn't even know that he had other movies, to be honest. I had that was one of those movies. I think it was at like the
How
bargain.
Did you find that thing?
I think honestly, it was like at the bargain bin at Virgin Records in Times Square. And I was walking through, I used to just walk through, like that's how I found Session 9 was Session 9 was just sitting there and I went, this looks cool. And I would buy it and watch it.
I miss that Virgin Records, by the way. They had a killer horror section. When they went out of business, I cleaned them out.
The one in Times Square?
In Times Square,
I liked the one in Union Square.
It was always pricey, though. Virgin was
you
always
could
more
find
expensive.
like they had their dump bin where you could get shit for like $3.
I think that's where I got got horror because I saw that and I went, there's this weird goat head. It's something called horror.
It's out of print now, I think.
Oh man.
Has that got an alternate title? Because I've seen that, but I didn't know it's called horror.
It's just called horror.
Oh, weird.
It makes sense you found it in New York too, because nobody out here on the West Coast knows Dante's stuff.
Yeah.
That was
what are some of the other Dante Tomaselli films?
Well, his first movie was Desecration, and then he did horror, and then Satan's Playground. and then the new one is Torture Chamber.
Okay, I've only seen horror, and it was a little slow for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a trip. And I mean that literally. It's not a narrative at all. Mm-hmm. It's just really weird,
aesthetics
messed up
and stuff. Yeah,
it's just messed up scenes all in a row.
My friends hated me when I made them. I said, "You guys got to come over and watch this."
And that's why I liked. I was like,
"You're the kid in Found." The movie I was watching, you were that kid. You watched the tape, and
I was like, "Graham, you like that? You want to do 3 more hours of that?" So he came over and we did Desecration in Satan's Playground.
I murdered 5 people on the way home that night.
I can believe it.
I'm glad it was a good
It's
influence.
a little intense mind fuck there.
But yeah, so obviously he is a huge fan. So tell us about the transition to acting. I mean, was that kind of something you were always going to get into, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I've been acting since I was a little kid. My dad was an actor out here for a while before they moved back to Texas. He was on like General Hospital and Heart to Heart and Falcon Crest and stuff like that. And then, so I grew up always wanting to be an actor. I did musicals, all through childhood, and that's what I wanted to do when I, graduated high school. And so that's why I went to Fordham to major in theater. Mm-hmm. And then I did a lot of theater and ended up getting really heavily into sketch comedy in New York after college. And I founded a comedy troupe called Fucked, F-U-C-T. And we were together for, they're still going. This is like year 12 or something. Mm-hmm. And we... I liked to put a lot of horror elements into our shows there. There was one scene in particular called Nightmare where we, had all these demons come out and kidnap 3 audience members, and I had set up our backstage as a haunted house and like had one of us in a pig mask with a chainsaw that chased them, and it was silly.
Nice.
And then eventually, through the comedy world is how I met George Wendt, who knows as Norm from Cheers, and he became
the woman from Re-Animator the musical,
yes, and what a sexy woman he is.
Yeah, it was great. It was so fun.
That dress.
And he was the one. He's known Stuart Gordon forever and ever from the Chicago days, and he had become a friend. And he knew that I was a big horror fan. So then when he started getting involved with Re-Animator the musical, it was him who said, "Oh, Stuart, you should call Graham in to come read for Herbert West." And I will never forget it. I was in Vegas on a trip with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and she George Wendt emails me saying, "Hey, Stuart Gordon's gonna call you about Re-Animator the musical." And I said, "Stuart Gordon's going to call me?" What? And he calls me. I'm standing outside like some casino in Vegas, talking to Stuart Gordon. Wow. Like, "Yeah, I'd like for you to come in and read for this." And
now, did he see anything of your stuff, or was he going based on a recommendation?
I think it was largely on a recommendation. I had a video of me singing a song that I'd written for the comedy troupe called "My Baby Girl," which effectively is a very sweet love song about baby rape. And so Stuart Gordon watched that and
like, I like this kid's sensibility.
He's got some pluckiness there.
And then I sent my wife home to New York, and I drove to LA and read for it and ended up getting it.
Wow.
Were you a Re-Animator fan before that? Was that one of the franchises you knew? Okay.
Yeah, I knew Re-Animator. And I hadn't seen Bride of Re-Animator or Beyond Re-Animator yet at that point. Of course I have now, but yeah,
you don't really need to have seen Beyond.
Best, actually.
Yeah.
Right. No, Bride's good. I like Bride.
Bride's all right.
Yeltsin's still,
the little bat head.
Yeah.
But
that was pretty fun.
But yeah, I'd been a big Stuart Gordon fan, and especially Re-Animator. That was one of the movies that it showed me that horror comedy is I think such an elevated art form. It made me go back and rewatch, because I remember when I saw Re-Animator, it wasn't, I don't know, I was in high school or something. And I saw that and I went, this is so funny and so effective. And you care about the characters, like what you were talking about. You need to care about these characters. It's so well acted, and you care about everybody. And I went back and I watched like Evil Dead 2 again, which just, oh my God, this is so brilliant. People think, it's horror comedy. It's cutting away at the horror, but no, it's, I think, so much.
And Dead Alive as well.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
It's like there's a few that can still scare. That's what I always say. Like, I don't really like horror comedy where it's just a comedy that's using horror elements.
Yeah,
that's a genre I've never really loved. But when it's like Fright Night or any of these ones, they're really like able to still scare you briefly with the horror and then make you laugh about it. That's great.
Even Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead, I know is more of a straight comedy movie, but there are some really effective moments in there.
Yeah, no, it is a good film. You're
right.
I eat my words.
No, I mean, I'm agreeing with you. You know, I think
I'm choking on them.
But anyway, yeah. So that's how I got involved with Re-Animator.
Wow. So in New York, you were primarily a stage actor. I mean, did you want to get into films or stuff like that, or was?
Yeah, I think my main thing is I've always wanted to. I've had several loves. I've loved comedy and I've loved horror films and I've loved creating my own material. And so as an actor, you know, that's what I wanted to do. And you know, the opportunity to come out here to LA and you know, because New York, there is a lot going on. Like I had done some short films out there, but there's just not as much as here. I mean, everybody's making movies.
Yeah.
And it's really opened my eyes to, you know, especially right now with independent film having such a I don't know if renaissance is the right word, but I mean, you can make, like you're talking about this movie Found, you know, made for like $10,000.
Or The Battery, I mean.
You know, or The Battery, or I was talking about Primer the other day with somebody.
Oh,
and
such a good one.
It was made for like $7,000, and it's an awesome movie.
Yeah.
You know, and it shows what a bunch of artists working together can do.
And people are always like, the biggest debate I always hear about indie stuff and digital is like, oh, but then there'll be a proliferation of crap and you'll never see the good stuff. It won't rise to the top. It's like, no, the good stuff. Like just like Battery, enough people start telling you about it and they'll pass the tape around and stuff will still rise.
I've always said, whenever I've been asked about, you know, the fact that we do have this saturation right now with indie films, that anytime there's a saturation, the one thing that it does is it makes us smarter consumers.
Right.
We learn to see what's good and what's bad. When you're only getting 3 films, it's hard to discern that. So.
I mean, but even on bigger terms, like even the big budget stuff, like the studio pictures, there's just as many bad ones as there are good ones. So
actually, the
ratio is the same between independents and, you know, there's good ones and there's bad ones.
Last year, I saw better independent films than I did studio films.
Absolutely.
You know? I could name 3 studio films that I saw that I thought were worthwhile. I could name 10 indies that I thought were brilliant. So.
Well, and I mean, now, you know, look at this, like, you know, a group of people that are talking about horror films that they love, where, you know, this is so prevalent. Like the internet has allowed for all of us to share our thoughts about this, and you're not having to, you know, go, you know,
troll on that,
you know, troll or like go, you know, ask the video store guy, what do you like, you know, and it's the information's out there. I think it's more movies are better.
Yeah. So has everyone in this room seen Re-Animator the musical?
Yes. 3 times. I was there on the night. I don't know if you guys were, but the night where you guys did a test and you asked for the audience's like feedback on certain gags.
Oh yeah.
Because I'll never forget one gag that just didn't work at all at that point was because the fridge was too low. And it was opening, and you couldn't see. No one in the audience could see the dead cat. Yeah. And so I remember putting my hand up and go, "Well, you can't see the cat." And then I saw it like maybe a couple months later, and that gag killed. And I was just like, "Oh, that's so cool!" To have seen something in development was actually pretty neat.
Yeah, and that was so important with that too, because so many of those things, you know, the special effects and stuff that we were doing were just so complicated. It took a lot of that from an outsider perspective to go, you know, because when you're in it, you're so in it that you don't quite get it. Yeah, but that was a show that really. It had a lot of evolution over there. We did it off and on for like 2 years.
I hadn't actually planned to see it just because at the time I was doing a lot of our production stuff and I was really overwhelmed with that. So I actually sent my intern at the time, Amanda Story, to go see it.
Oh, Amanda, yes.
Amanda,
she saw it a couple more times.
Yeah. Amanda ended up becoming like your groupie and ended up convincing me to go. So she ended up like getting us tickets and everything and the whole.
But didn't she see it like 100 times?
She saw it like 100, like every night.
Yeah, she saw it a lot.
And so she ended up somehow getting tickets for the entire Fango LA staff to go. So we all went as a group one night.
And you guys all like sat in the front row or something, right?
We all sat in the front row straight across. And so
you were
totally like staring at every Fango
I was totally
reviewer.
geeking out too because I knew, you know, I think she had said something like, "Oh, Fangoria is coming." Like, oh my God, I'm freaking out.
And for those who don't realize the importance of sitting in the front row with this show is that you wear slickers if you're in the front. And he goes full on basically with an intestine and squirts whoever's in the first 3 or 4 rows.
How
pretty
fun was that
extremely.
to do every single night?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I mean,
did you pick somebody like, all right, I'm going to get that person right there?
I mean, there was always one person in particular that I would get at the very end of it, you know, and I think it was one of the last nights where we did it. Eli Roth was there and he was sitting right in the front row. And I remember like going, "Oh my God, what a dream." Like I get to hose down Eli Roth like a maniac with his blood. But the cool thing about that was I had such power because the spray nozzle would go way further than 3 rows. And so I could sort of choose how far it went when I wanted to. And I remember when there was the night early on where Barbara Crampton and Jeffrey Combs.
No pressure.
Yeah, I know. Pressure. Like basically the whole cast came and they were all sitting, sort of towards like the middle of the theater. And I just decided I have to get him. I have to get him. Yeah. And so I arced it back. I arced it back a little bit more, and they all ducked down under the chairs. It was pretty fun.
Now I'm not going to ask you the obvious thing, which is, what did Jeffrey think? But I am curious about how you felt on the night, knowing that you're going to be performing with him there. Like, I'm more curious about that effect.
I mean, he was very sweet, and of course, all of them were wonderful, and I mean, Barbara's like such an amazing person. Yeah, but I was certainly nervous, but I also knew that what I was doing was very different.
Totally different.
I mean, my whole goal with it was, I had certainly seen it a bunch of times before, but when I got the role, I sort of said to myself, okay, I'm not going to watch it. I don't want to sit down and like match his mannerisms. I want to approach this from a character perspective, and obviously there are things that are kind of gonna be present in the character no matter what, but. So I felt comfortable in going, this is different enough where I'm not just trying to be Jeffrey Combs part 2, I'm trying to do my own thing. And actually afterwards he came up and he was very complimentary and he said, well, it's yours now.
Yeah.
And I just went, this is so great.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny. I've mentioned this before in the show, but it warrants mentioning here again. One of the first musicals I saw that was based on a horror property was Evil Dead. Which started out in Canada, and then they moved it to New York. That was the next.
That's where I saw it.
Yeah, and in New York, the one actor they brought from the Canadian production was, I believe his name was Ryan Ward, who played Ash in the original Canadian production. And to me, it's like, you're going to this thing, you're not sure what to expect, but you always think, especially with these type of films, like, well, Bruce Campbell's Ash. Nobody else could be Ash. That's what they said about the remake. But once I saw the show and saw how this guy embodied it. And not only that, but he was an amazing singer. So he was singing all these hilarious songs that fit the Evil Dead tone. I just had this moment where I'm like, all right, I'm looking at him and he's not imitating Bruce Campbell. I was like, that's Ash. And I just kind of had this epiphany where I'm like, oh my God, Ash is now a character and a lot of people are going to end up playing him one day, And I felt kind of the same about Re-Animator because Combs is not what's described in the original story at all. So
he's like a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy in the story.
So the movie version is Jeffrey Combs, and I walked into Re-Animator musical thinking the same thing, like, well, Jeffrey Combs is Herbert West, nobody else can do it. But then you came out, and I'm like, oh my God, Herbert West is totally a character, and this is the next one, and other people will probably keep playing this character.
Because imitation, really cool. I guess, could only last for like 5 minutes, right? Like when you imitate, you can't sustain a performance.
And why even? I thought at that point, why even do it? Yeah. If you're imitating, like I don't see the point. But if you're making it your own, you're telling a story. Because that was what Stuart kept saying: is every single rehearsal it was tell the story. Tell the story. The story's there. The characters are there, and people want to see a good story. They don't want to see a recreation on stage of their favorite movie,
What do you learn? I mean, the thing because I was never really a theater person, I was more of a film guy.
Excuse me, weren't you in Godspell?
I was in Godspell in my last year of high school. I danced on a tabletop. So I'm not saying I was completely not a musical guy, but the thing that always amazes me about actors, and that's kind of why I'm always in awe of actors, is the repetition of doing something every night. And what did you learn from this particular production, doing it every night and then doing it in New York? But obviously it's different every night, but just what did you learn or from working with Stuart on such a consistent basis, which is not what a film is, because a film's always scrambling for time. Mm-hmm. People often think there's an exchange of philosophy, like between a director and actor, like, oh, you worked with Kubrick, it must have been amazing. Yeah, we were rushed every day. I mean, we never even got to talk. I mean, that's the reality of film, right? So I'm curious what you got from that repetition, I guess.
It was really awesome. I mean, Stuart's such a giving director, and we fortunately, had a nice long rehearsal process, so that was very comfortable. I think for me, it's just about keeping it fresh and about really being able to go there in your mind and not fall into the trap of phoning it in of you can, because at a certain point, I mean, it's muscle memory. You can say the lines, you don't have to think about it. And I think it could be easy to tune out and just go through the motions. But, obviously you don't want to do that.
Like Jesse Merlin.
That
You don't want to go down that road.
No.
He's amazing, by the way.
Yeah, he's incredible.
It really blew my mind what he did with that. It was just so pervy.
He's my god,
creepy role.
Yeah,
but
I loved hating him every night.
He plays Dr. Hill.
Yeah, he plays
Dr.
Dr.
Hill.
Hill.
That's who.
Yeah, I loved hating him every night.
But his voice is more. I don't know enough about singing again, but it's maybe more opera-ish.
Yeah, he has a big opera background.
And that's, I think, the moment when he started singing in that, I think that was the moment where maybe the whole thing took a different level for me, where I was like, oh, wow, this is not at all what I could have expected from this character, but it's perfect.
It is. It fit him very well because it was a creepy timbre that he had in his voice.
He's such a big David Gale fan too, and he's he's also a huge horror fan, and of course has done Rocky Horror for years and years, and
that makes sense.
He's wonderful. But for me, it was just about keeping it fresh, and it was about whenever somebody. I think my motto was always just talk and listen, and make sure that I'm really listening to the other people. And if you're really listening to your other actors on stage, it's always going to be new, and you're always going to be able to react honestly and in the moment. And plus, when you have such audience participation as we did, and there was that added element of people, being there in the front row that I knew I was going to get to play with, and I knew we're often very vocal. It keeps it alive.
That's fun. Yeah, because I saw Evil Dead back in New York. I think 3 times, and all 3 it was just as fun as the last time.
Yeah, that was a fun show.
Same thing with Re-Animator. I saw it at least 3 times, and on every occasion. One time, Angus Scrimm was sitting 2 rows in front of me. The next time, Joe Dante was over to the right.
Angus Scrimm came to the show?
Oh, yeah,
totally. I didn't know that.
For sure. For sure. When you performed it, so yeah.
Oh, my God.
So, so there's that fun that every night, at least in Los Angeles, there's some horror icon or friend
I
of
can't
Stuart's.
tell you. Wes Craven came to the show one night.
Oh, cool.
And it was on the same night, Wes Craven and Johnny Knoxville were both there. Both of my comedy and my horror worlds were colliding in this amazing... It was awesome.
Wow. Have you had any interaction with any people like that you kind of grew up with that talked to you after the show or anything?
Oh, yeah. I got to talk to Wes Craven when he, and he was very complimentary. Same with Eli Roth. And, all those guys, it was amazing. And that's what, and of course I had just moved to LA from New York. I pretty much moved for the musical. Mm-hmm. And I was going, oh my God, these people just come out and see shows here, And with horror too, I find that the horror community is also just that much more condensed and personal, and people really love each other here.
It's a very, I always say it's kind of a very incestuous horror community where everybody knows each other and they all hang out and they all go see each other's stuff. It's pretty remarkable.
People are all very supportive.
Yeah.
It's
sucks to be an avant-garde filmmaker out in LA. Like, it's just you by yourself with cutting tools and film strips. It's a shame, but
and you guys took this, well, not necessarily on a tour, but you did take it to other places at some point.
Yeah.
So how did it play in completely different types of audiences?
The audiences were all, I would say that all of the audiences responded very warmly to it. I think we had some really rabid audiences in New York when we took it there for New York Musical Theater Festival.
The New York Fango staff was there for that one.
Oh yeah, that was such a blast. And then Edinburgh was really, really fun. Edinburgh was sort of a mixed bag. Sometimes they put us in this really, really giant theater, and it was something like 500 seats or something, and which was really cool. But the way that the Edinburgh Fringe Festival worked, it was sort of difficult to get to always get that full every single night, because we were basically doing it every night for a month in competition with 2,000 every shows.
Month.
Wow.
In Edinburgh, wow.
And
you must have gotten drunk off your ass.
Oh my God, you have no idea. Because we were
whiskey.
the last show. We finished, I don't know, our show ran from like 10:30 to midnight, and then all it were after hours bars after that until like 6 or 7 in the morning. Oh my God, we were drunk a lot.
Wow.
But it was fun. Yeah, but everybody's loved it. And, there are horror fans everywhere. That was the thing that it showed me, that the horror fans are just as awesome around the world as they are here. It's and they're diehard and very loving. And if you, one thing that Bill Moseley told me, and I'm such a big Bill Moseley fan, so like getting to talk to him after was such an enormous honor. One thing he told me is, he said, if you take it seriously, if you take horror seriously, they'll love you forever. And if you treat it as an art, they do, they'll love you forever. And that's how I've always felt about it. Mm-hmm. It's an art, it's not a stepping stone to something bigger. Right. This is what I want to be doing. And I think that all of us in Re-Animator the musical really felt that way. We wanted to be there doing this because this excited us.
Yeah. I know that it's come up before. We might have even asked Stuart about this, but and it's probably complicated rights-wise, I guess. But any talk or thought about making a movie version of Re-Animator the musical, or even just releasing
the soundtrack,
both the soundtrack or even a live version of the show, like a live DVD or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's all that's been talked about. I would love to do a movie version. I mean, oh my god, I would love it. And there were definitely a lot of conversations about it. I think that rights issues are definitely a big hurdle. I know there were a lot of sort of hurdles with the soundtrack, because everybody wanted to do one, but then there were just a lot of issues and paperwork and weird stuff to get around with that. So I know that everybody wants to do it. And like, I actually had lunch with Stuart the other day and, just to catch up, and he was saying, yeah, we're still working on trying to mount the show again. And these things just take time. I mean, you can tell why it takes like 10 years for a musical to get to Broadway.
Would you go if they had another call and they were saying going Broadway or something? You'd sign up again.
I love this show and I love the people and I love this role so much. You can, on the back of my iPhone, I have the green syringe.
Yeah. It's funny that honestly, two of the best shows I've ever seen in my life both were at that little theater, and they're both Stuart Theater. Nevermore. I mean, but they're totally different, and that's what's so cool about them. They're total polar opposites tonally, and they're both amazing in their own right. And I wouldn't have. I knew I would probably be the target for something like Nevermore, but I didn't expect to. There's something that no one knows here, because we've been talking about behind the scenes, is that I'm not a big musical guy, especially musical films. Musicals live, I do react really well to it.
Into that.
I do love. So this is kind of part of the transition, but I think that something is lost in translation when they put them on screen. Often for me,
totally disagree.
Why?
For me, musicals get even more successful on screen because it opens up the air a little bit more to allow for other things. If you look at something like, I tried to convince you guys to watch Reefer Madness this week, the musical. And when you see Reefer Madness or Repo the Genetic Opera or something like that mounted as a stage show, there's limitations. And within that limitations, there's usually a certain amount of innovation that they find, like how to make intestines squirt blood on stage and things like that. But when you mount a musical on film, it completely opens all of that up to bigger effects.
But it could also be where it originates too. Like for me, Repo, I avoid. This is the thing about me and musicals. I actually avoid them, like film musicals. So it takes me years. So the big one I haven't seen that I tried to see before this. I'll see it after because I'm a huge De Palma fan. I've never seen Phantom of the Paradise.
He's never seen.
In fact,
that movie.
I might say I think it's the only film I've not seen of his because it's a musical.
It last night again.
Oh, don't hate on it. No, it's a musical.
I don't hate on it. I avoided it because
you got to see it.
And where I'm getting with this is Repo. I avoided like the plague. Like I did not want to see that movie so hard, and when I finally saw it, it really, really surprised me and because it was originated for that medium. I think if that had been a stage show that was adapted, I wouldn't have cared for it. But it used that medium.
It started
I thought it was a film first, wasn't it?
Stage show.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
Terrence originally created the stage show. It ran for years before.
Which Darren directed.
Like that whole scope of that whole project?
It's very different from the film, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's much more contained, which is what I was talking about with theater, is it has to stay much more contained because you have to deal with sets and how you're going to rotate the world and things like that. It's much more complicated with you're looking at it in a theatrical term.
Right.
So when Repo was a stage show, it was much more contained to, I remember it had like a multi-level set and each of the levels were a different location, but it had to, you're minimizing down your sets, you're minimizing down, everything.
I think mostly the same song. I mean, you could find some clips on YouTube, but it's interesting to see that.
I remember it had a couple of extra songs in the original stage show.
But part of the what succeeds in it is casting people who you don't expect to sing. Like Bill Moseley's singing makes me laugh out loud how awesome it is. Like when he bursts into him and Anthony Head blew me away.
Yeah.
Anthony Head's got a great voice.
He's got a great voice. Yeah. But like when Moseley and the guy with the mask is from Skinny Puppy Ogre. Those moments are really fantastic, or Paris Hilton. And so that film did surprise. So it's more, I think with me, it's actually not so much that I don't like them, it's that I kind of actively avoid them until they catch up to me, and then I'm like, oh, that was good. You know what I mean? Just it's not my thing. I think in general I like film for its realistic value, and I don't mean things can be heightened, but I need to believe it's real. It's usually when I see people start singing, I'm no.
Yeah, see, I think. Well, I think that for the most part, I would say that I like musicals, but I would agree that I think that they tend to be more effective on stage than they are on film, unless. Well, I don't even know if it's more effective. I think that they're most effective when the filmmaker knows, okay, I'm making a musical. How do I, what makes a musical a musical? Well, it's people that, for me, it's not just that they're breaking out into song. It's that in this universe, when you can't contain your emotions anymore, you have to sing them. When you can't, you have to dance them. And then because a part of musicals, a part of the artistry of musicals and what makes them special is that people are really singing and people are really dancing. It's like why I said, the movie musicals from like the 40s and 50s, I think are so much better than a lot of the movie musicals you see now because they're really dancing. They're really
Busby Berkeley ones.
Yeah, I mean, they're so amazing to watch. Like you watch Singin' in the Rain, and you see that amazing dance number, and you go, "That's why that movie's a classic."
And it was also because that was what was in demand. So all the best talent, all the best directors, Vincent Minnelli, all the best choreographers, everyone was working in that medium at that point.
Even people like James Cagney who have these like tough guy personas still stop and go do musicals.
Yeah, and it was a very different, totally different thing then.
Yeah, well, and that's why I like, we're talking about horror musicals. My favorite musical of all time is Sweeney Todd. I love Sweeney Todd with passion. I've loved it forever. I think I have on DVD every single iteration of the stage show. And I was so nervous about the Tim Burton movie. And then I saw it, and I gotta say, it's not for me, it doesn't touch what my memory of seeing it live was. But I thought what he did with it was, he made it his own.
Yep.
And he made it something different. And the actors may not have the most incredible voices, but it doesn't really matter. Helena Bonham Carter just slays that movie.
Yeah.
I think Johnny Depp does great, and I mean,
it's just perfect. It fits his aesthetic.
Yeah.
That was a good marriage in terms of filmmaker and material. And all right, it's its own thing.
Right. And that's how it can really work, and I think that's why Re-Animated the musical works so well. Is Stuart knew, okay, Re-Animated the movie was one thing. Re-Animated the musical is going to be another thing.
Yep.
And you had all the original creative team, the writer, the musician, I believe, the composer.
Richard Band they used some of his music in it, but it was a new composer. This amazing guy Mark Nutter. But then, Tony Dublin and John Carl Buechler, all those guys, they worked on the...
That's incredible. That's incredible to get the same group of people who worked on a film 25 years earlier, maybe more, to come back together to work on the same thing but different.
It was. I think it was exciting for all of them too. Yeah. They loved it.
Well, for me, I think it was something Elric was talking before we started rolling about. You were giving an example about seeing Les Mis live, where that's something that's a little
even
bit,
bad Les Mis. I still get moved by live.
Not horror, but it's more emotional than say a movie version of it. Or
none of the movie versions. I'm just one wasn't a musical, but the musical, it's interesting. But I guess, everyone's different, what we watch, what we like. But for me, maybe my defenses are up more, my shield with that kind of stuff. Yet I could watch Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and I accept it as real when they sing, But
Les Mis is a little bit different because
grandiose.
A lot of horror musicals in particular aim to call attention to the device of,
that makes sense.
Okay, we're going to sing now. And they aim to call attention. If you look at something like Little Shop of Horrors, it's very campy in that regard of, okay, and now we're going to sing doo-wop girls in the background. Let's go. Les Mis doesn't do that. Les Mis aims to pull you in emotionally and use the music to heighten it even more. And that's why it's more powerful in person, I would think. I didn't like the movie either.
Yeah. Well, and Cats was one of the earliest directions I ever had, and I draw attention to that
Victoria,
because
the white cat.
No, I only draw attention because I think I was I honestly think I was 11 years old. I was in the front row of Cats, and one of the cats who's just smoking hot girl just gets on my lap as a kid, and I'm like, holy shit, this is musicals, and I never got that high again. Wow. It was like your opium story. I can't get that feeling, and
it will never be the same.
As I'm saying this, is getting on my lap and trying to repeat, but it's just not the same.
Stop purring.
I have an erection.
Now you are wearing pants, right? Because
that's right. There's a rumor
that you guys were not going to wear pants tonight.
I don't know.
If you're going to talk erections and all. But no, I guess the point I was trying to make about Elric's Les Mis comparison is, for me, with both with stage musicals and movie musicals, the thing that I personally, I'm drawn to is, I guess, the communal experience. The reason I like stage musicals or horror stuff so much is, obviously if it's very well performed, like Re-Animator or even Silence, the Silence of the Lambs one, which I saw.
Also starring, Jesse Merlin also he understudied Hannibal Lecter in that.
Oh my God, yeah.
Wow.
I could see him more as the, what's the doctor who works in there?
Dr.
Chilton?
Chilton.
Yeah. I could see him as a Chilton.
He did that too. I saw him as Lecter, and he was amazing.
That's funny. I mean, that if you guys haven't heard anything from Silence, there's a clip reenacted with Legos on YouTube. The name of the song is
It Puts the Lotion in the Basket.
Put the fucking lotion in the basket.
Yeah.
One of the funniest things I've ever heard and seen, and that show is just amazing. But my point being is, when you see something like that with a group audience and everyone starts laughing, especially I would never think of Silence of the Lambs as being even remotely funny in any way, shape, or form, but they made everything about that movie absolutely hysterical. So it's the communal experience. The same with movies, because the first time I saw Repo the Genetic Opera, I saw a press screening in New York City on 42nd Street, and I had to take the train in, and people are bumping into me, and I'm already kind of frantic, and I sit there with a bunch of journalists that aren't reacting at all. And I did not really like it the first time I saw it, because I'm like, I wasn't really I wasn't fully there, But then a month or two later, or a couple months later, Darren and Terrence had taken it on the road and done this whole road show for Repo. And I drove out to Jersey to meet them, and they did it for a sold out crowd. And these people were shadow casting it, and there was this party, and people were all dressed up, and I loved the movie seeing it that way. I loved it, because I saw so many people that you would never think, and that's the other thing is it brings out, musicals like that bring out, maybe the shy girl at school that is a little awkward about stuff, but here she is dressed up as one of these characters singing her heart out. It's I like that it brings
they have
something
incredible
out
fan
in people.
bases. I mean,
that's
who follow everything they do now. It's pretty wild.
I mean, even I don't know Rocky Horror that well, but which you could speak to that. But that's kind of the whole deal
that's
with
what
that.
I've been thinking about this whole time. Yeah.
I wrote it down to talk about, because I'm treating you guys to a night of Rocky Horror in a couple of weeks.
So you keep threatening.
No, I said I was going to do it at my birthday, and then I couldn't find a babysitter. They do it every weekend, every Saturday here in LA
at the New Art.
Yep,
it's so much fun.
So
much fun.
If Graham comes, I'll go.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm
there we
treating
go.
all four of you, or all three of you guys. That's it. It's happening.
If Tommy Vaisu comes, I'll go. Because we can say anyone, right? She's going to make it happen.
I got to get you guys there. So
but I think Rocky Horror is a great example, though. I mean, the first time I saw that, it was at home with a friend of mine, and we were like, oh, we've heard of this, and we watched it, and it wasn't, I didn't get it. I went, I love Tim Curry, and he's great, and whatever, but then you go and you see it in a theater.
That's what I keep talking about. They've never seen it live before. And
it's a totally different experience.
I was definitely very entrenched in Rocky for a long time, where I had first seen it in high school. And I remember very vividly, I had chicken pox in 10th grade. And because I was so old getting them, I got them. They were horrible. And so mom kept going to the video store, and she would bring me home stacks of videotapes each night. She was pretty much just cleaning out the horror section. She brought me back Rocky Horror Picture Show. And so I watched it covered in chicken pox, and I was just kind of the music's kind of fun, but what's the appeal? Mm-hmm. And then it was while I was still in high school, I remember that me and a friend drove 2 hours to see it live, because there was a documentary before it about the live show. And I was kind of well, the movie's kind of blah, but I really wanted to see the live show. So we drove to DC to see a live show. And it just opened up a world to me. And so when I was in college, I did the shadow casting thing. And then I ended up becoming part of the actual musical tour and playing Magenta, where you actually sing it, the actual musical. And it just became so much to me. But I have to say, as much as I love Rocky, I love the sequel even more. Shock Treatment.
Shock Treatment is awesome.
I love it.
It is really cool. It's really fun.
You've seen that one.
Where's the writer from? That's right. There's a statue of the writer in New Zealand, because Richard O'Brien is a Kiwi. Yes, and we have a statue in Hamilton, one of our small crummier towns. Sorry, swamp donkeys from Hamilton. But anyway, it's Richard O'Brien. He lived in England afterwards, but
I thought he was British.
This is the weirdest thing, and this is a true story. This is he always likes my weird stories about my childhood, because there'll be some weird New Zealand thing. He's like, wow, so you didn't know about that? Society was huge in New Zealand when I was a kid. It was probably the same as Re-Animator. Anyway, here's the craziest.
You've never heard of Dio?
Yeah, I still haven't. I don't know what that means. And I don't know what Guar is. But I'll tell you the craziest, and this is true. I first didn't love Rocky Horror that much, because the first time I saw it was on TV. And it turns out it took years later to pass where I was like, well, I thought it was only a Kiwi thing, because our ex-prime minister, which is our president, from who was very controversial and who was kind of like a Reagan type guy, he played the narrator. And it was all New Zealanders.
Holy shit, the
And so there
criminologist?
is an alternate version That is all New Zealand cast, and it was filmed. And I don't know if it was a film stage show or if it was an actual movie.
We have to find it.
My mind is blown right now.
So if you're criminologist was the president of New Zealand,
Prime Minister, anyone in New Zealand listening to this, if you know of what I'm talking about, please confirm that I'm not mentally insane. But no, I saw this, and so I saw it very early, and I remember going, "Oh, it's okay," but it feels a bit amateur because it was a bunch of. It probably was an amateur, but the Prime Minister, he must have been done with his term because he was old in the seat. But his joke name was Piggy Muldoon. People made fun. He going, and he was really great as the. But the craziest thing, it makes sense because it probably makes sense because Richard O'Brien was a New Zealander, so probably there was some production that was done at a high end and they probably filmed it. But all I know is that's all I knew of it, and it was years, and I mean years, like almost maybe 17 years old when I then saw the other version, and I couldn't believe how Don't Dream It, Be It, just cuts me to ribbons. It's the most beautiful song I've ever heard. So it's just so funny that I had this totally bizarre feel, and I'd love to track it down. I'm sure we'll find a clip somewhere. I'm sure it must be online. But yeah, so to me, it was a New Zealand. It's a little New Zealand movie, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it wasn't.
God, it was amazing.
But back to what you're saying, let's expound on the sequel because it's a loose sequel, right? But it's such a different world.
It's very loose, and it stars Jessica Harper. Jessica
Harper.
It does,
yeah. Shock Hermia.
Yeah, who's also in Phantom of the Paradise that Elric has never watched.
And Stardust Memories, my favorite Woody Allen film, and fucking Suspiria. She's like 4 for 4 for me.
In this for? But it stars her, and then it's got somebody different playing Brad. It's not Barry Bostwick, but she plays. I can't even remember she plays Janet. Mm-hmm. And then it's got somebody different playing Brad, and it's set up as if they have been married. And there is a TV show that is Denton. All of Denton has become a TV show. And it's very kind of predates itself because it's a reality show where everyone in the town is part of the reality show. So if you go to make waffles, there will be a commercial about your waffle iron while you're
integration,
doing it.
Just like what we have with Real TV.
It's really crazy. And it's so innovative. And it's set up as if Denton is just this massive reality show, and Brad and Janet go on it to get help for their marriage. And they end up getting help from this whacked out doctor. There's a blind host on it that's really popular. And Janet becomes a star. She ends up becoming the star of the network while Brad gets kind of institutionalized and left in the dust.
It's a weird film. And it's even watching, it's weird. The way it's set up, it feels almost like you're looking at something on a stage.
Yeah.
Because of the show.
It's supposed to
a
look
weird
like
movie.
a soundstage. It looks like you're sitting in the audience of a soundstage because you see set pieces moving in and out, and you see the curtain lifted and things happening backstage, and then you'll flash back to the scene on stage, and then commercials will roll. It's a weird.
That's probably why
film,
it hasn't caught on in the same way as Rocky, because it's much more satirical. On the nose.
Shadow casts for shock treatment, but usually only at Rocky Horror conventions. I was in one of the shadow casts for shock treatment, but you don't see them too much. It's really
that's like serious street cred if you're in a shadow cast for shock treatment.
I was a cheerleader.
Gangsta.
So Rocky Horror, but you guys really need to see it live just because it is a completely different thing. You see the movie and you go, hey, Eddie's song's kind of catchy. Don't Dream It Be, it's cool. But when you see it live, it's such a communal experience where, literally thousands upon tens of hundreds of thousands of people across the nation know the exact same thing to say at the exact same time. And that's where it gets really magical, because most of this, it's all done kind of rhizomatically of you go to the show and then you learn what to do and then you tell somebody else. I'm sure that you can find a list on the internet, but most of the people I know, that's not how you learn what to do at Rocky Horror. You learn it from going or talking to somebody. And so it's a really cool kind of communal experience.
Not to play prosecutor, but I've heard both of you now say that the films we're talking about weren't actually good the first time you saw them. It wasn't until you saw it with a great group of people acting live.
That's fair.
So that's actually completely going to what I said, which is
Phantom of the Paradise does not fall into that.
Okay. And that's just a great movie. The musicals that I will talk about.
I'm sold on that, seeing that. Yeah. I want to see that. I just needed to get
I do want to, while we're talking about the Rocky Horror and communal viewing experience, I have to throw out there a movie that not nearly enough people talk about, which is Forbidden Zone.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And Forbidden Zone, now granted, I'll say that for those of you who don't know Forbidden Zone, it's an amazing Richard Elfman film that was originally designed to be the early Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo, to be like one of their stage shows, and it's totally insane from start to finish. Danny Elfman plays the devil. It's I think his first movie soundtrack that he did. I'm pretty sure
it's out of print now. But,
no.
Really?
Just put it out.
No, because Richard Elfman's Indiegogo right now for Forbidden Zone 2 is happening.
Oh my
gosh. It's but that movie, I will say, when I first saw it, stoned out of my gourd in New York, during college. I went, oh my God, this movie's amazing. But another movie that when you go and you see it as that experience, and they do it once in a while, I think out in Long Beach or something, and do it with Shadowcast and stuff. It's just like, it's so much fun. And it's more, I don't know. I highly recommend people go check that out. Not nearly enough people talk about that movie, but once you see it, you'll understand why
I've never seen that one, but you know what? Maybe you can answer this question, but it was in the cult section back when I worked at Amoeba. But there's like these two versions. There's like, is it originally in black and white and then they made a color?
It's originally in black and white, right, but they colorized it. However, I will say that Richard Elfman says that he now prefers the colorized version to the black and white.
Wow.
And because it's weird when you watch it, because they did a lot of the sets in black and white. So when they colorized it, all the sets are still in black and white, cool. But the people are in this weird, like, kind of odd Technicolor. And this movie's already about the sixth dimension, and it's already totally bizarre.
Shit.
So it totally works. Like when you see it, it's not like seeing a black and white movie. Like suddenly you're watching, I don't know, Casablanca in color, and it's totally weird. Yeah. No, it works because it's already a completely batshit movie.
Which version do you prefer?
I like the colorized.
Really? Okay.
But that's the first time, that's the first type that I saw.
Okay.
And so that sort of became what that movie was to me. But it just adds to the weirdness, and the weirdness is part of the experience.
Right.
I feel like that's something I've only seen clips of. I don't think I've seen that film.
Yeah.
You should watch. It's oddly like captivating because you watch the first like 15 minutes of it and you think you'll never be able to finish this whole movie, but then you keep watching and you suddenly can't stop, and then Hervé Villechaize is like humping people, and it's crazy.
Have you guys seen The Apple? It's not quite a horror film.
I've never made it through The Apple.
I own it, and you have to make it to the end. It gets crazy. It's kind of a horror film because it's in the same vein of Phantom of the Paradise, where it's all about success and selling your soul to get there, and the devil is actually running this like music industry. So it's almost kind of the same plot of Phantom of the Paradise, except there's no Phantom.
Right.
But it is the same kind of batshit, like, oh my God, what are they doing? There's a scene that is literally an orgy musical song. It's just bizarre.
What's that Village People one? That's the craziest I've ever seen in my life. Like one of the craziest movies. It opens with Steve Guttenberg working at like an amoeba place, and he gets fired. And he's like, "Whatever, I don't need it." And he's on roller skates, and he roller skates out on this long trekking shot and starts singing. And then he basically he founds the Village People.
Well, that's actually a documentary.
I love you to death. I love you. It's crazy, but it has the real Village People. And it's all about them coming together as a band. But Steve Guttenberg's their manager. It's very strange.
Wow.
But it's I can't remember the name. It'll come back to me. But the musicals sometimes they do have a hypnotic. There have been ones where I've been drawn in because you're just like, wow, this is just insane.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great songs. Not necessarily whole musicals, but like I'm just curious what some of your favorite musical tracks or singing tracks in genre films are, because there's so many when you start looking through, whether they're title songs or like you did a whole thing on the crazy rap songs which are insane, like the Freddie rap and things like that. What are some of the ones you guys have?
Well, I mean, Dream Warriors by Dokken. Come on.
Yay.
Wow, I wasn't prepared for this one. I didn't research it. But I will have to say Wicker Man, which we were arguing before whether or not it is a musical. Elric and I were arguing this before the show began. And I still would call it a musical because the characters are there and actually singing the songs, but you said it wasn't.
Well, they're just a cult singing. Like it would be like if a cult was singing anything before they killed someone.
There are two songs in that I still love, Willow's Song and Gently Johnny.
Yeah, and even what's the one big one you sing with Christopher Lee going for it at the end, and they're all in a circle without doing a spoiler. You're all flaming mad, but no, all I'm saying is that it's a movie with musical that aren't numbers. They're deranged people singing a song because they're trying to
face it.
To me there's a slight difference, but it's I don't know. I think I'm maybe more drawn to crazy songs. Growing up, Transylvania 65000. I love that.
Movie.
I love that. Yeah, I liked the film as a kid a lot, but I always loved that song. It stuck with me years later.
65000.
That one was cool. My all-time favorite's definitely the Spider Baby opening. I just think that's beautiful, and it's Lon Chaney singing it, and it's just gorgeous, and the graphics are gorgeous. Everything about that.
I always liked The South's Gonna Rise Again from 2000 Maniacs.
Oh,
the song
is that the new one or the Lewis one?
It's the old one.
And it's actually sung by
version
Herschel
of the new one,
Gordon Lewis.
There's a terrible, the worst one, when I was looking this up just before, the original Blob Oh my God. Everyone should just go on YouTube and you would never think, because it's quite a serious movie. They were with Steve McQueen. The original Blob opens with this like bizarre kind of upbeat, jazzy just soundtrack. And then suddenly, just before the main credits come up, it has these lyrics that are so goofy. And like, it's all feel good. It's like, ooh, and the Blob, there's a bit on the wall. Boom, boom. Oh, there's a bit on my table. And you're like, what the fuck were you thinking?
amazing.
So look it up. It's bizarre.
You just reminded me of it's hands down my favorite horror movie song ever in the history of movies. The opening to Green Slime.
Oh, cool.
Is, if you guys haven't heard it,
it
is
Green
a
Slime
funk song. And I mean, the Green Slime movie is about these, like, it's kind of got an Asian, actually, I think it was filmed by an Asian director, but it's got this kind of Asian mentality to it where it's kind of Godzilla-esque in its filming style, and they're away on another planet and they discover green slime aliens and all this jazz. The effects are actually pretty cool, but it opens with this funk song, Green Slime. It's amazing. I have to post it on our Facebook page tonight.
Yeah, we'll post some of the songs. My number one is a song called Psyched by the 4D Witch. It was and this is something I've thought about a million times my whole life. I always want to talk about the song. The movie's terrible. It's the worst film I've ever seen. So when people ask you the worst, I only have one worst movie. It's not even a movie. It's like weird drug-fueled imagery. There was a bad story made up about it, that it was the film that was found in a can on the ranch where the Manson family had been hiding out. And so the rumor was that there's no movie that didn't exist anywhere else. Whatchamacallit, the founder, Something Weird Video, they have it on a double with something. Mm-hmm. It's really not worth watching the movie, but it had this title track that just repeats all the way through. And the lyrics are incredible. It's like, she comes from the belly of the devil bitch, so beware of the 4D witch. And it just keeps repeating. And it's really like, I think on YouTube you can find just the song, but it really is worth listening to, but never watch the movie. Whatever you do not watch the film.
You know, while I'm thinking about great songs from horror movies, what is the song from Hocus Pocus?
Oh,
you know, when the big spell's happening, and
I know what you're
I don't think I've even
about.
seen Hocus. Is that Mick Garris?
No.
Yeah.
That's like the it's Kathy Najimy and Bette Midler.
I can see the poster.
Mick Garris wrote it.
He wrote
it. Really? Mick Garris wrote Hocus Pocus?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
See? That's why you come here.
That's why I know. I learned,
There was
Shoot down Mike.
a movie that came out when I was a kid called Worst Witch. And it's got Tim Curry and Tim Curry. And he sings this crazy song.
Oh, I don't know this one.
Oh, it's so good.
On Halloween,
Worst
Witch begins.
This would be the most
run.
excited episode ever, where everyone's jumping out of this.
With the absolute like worst rhyming couplets
Yes.
of any song. They're so
Something
ridiculous.
spooky's going down,
and
down.
terrible
Cape
green screen
effects,
cape.
and he's like dancing with his cape. And has anybody seen my tambourine? He pulls out a tambourine at one point and dances with it.
Tim Curry and the Worst Witch.
Yeah,
was he a musical theater guy beforehand? Was that his background?
Because he did like Rocky Horror, and he was definitely like a British. Actually, I think he was more Shakespearean. I saw him in Spam a lot though, which was great with him.
Very funny guy.
What has Tim Curry not done?
Yeah.
I mean, that guy's
he
career.
did my favorite Tales from the Crypt episode, too.
Oh, where he played all the characters?
He plays all the characters, except for Ed Begley Jr.
Ed Begley Jr., yeah.
So.
That's pretty great.
What's the weirdest musical that you've seen, or the one that just kind of defies any
I have a couple.
logic?
Well, you know what? We pretty much went through shows already. And movies, I don't have a big list that we've already touched on them. But Rebekah, you have a ton of deep cuts for us.
I've got some weird ones here. I mean, well, some of them aren't so deep cut, like Cannibal the Musical.
I remember
think
that.
is a lot of fun. Some of the deep cut ones I have on here, Happiness of the Katakuris.
So that was on my list as just the good one.
Yeah, it's
That's
a great
one of the few that I actually really like.
It's fun. It's Takashi Miike, the guy who did Audition and Visitor Q. So he made a musical.
The zombies come back and sing.
And it's literally just about a family. It's like it's about the Katakuris, and it's insane.
They run like a motel.
Yeah,
it almost reminded me of like The Sound of Music, but because of the setting, they're remotely set with like lots of nature around them. So then they're all kind of holding hands and singing, but then there are also zombies coming back.
And supposedly, and I haven't researched this that thoroughly, but supposedly it's actually based off a movie, like an actual movie, and then they made it into a musical, loosely based. But yeah, it's very Sound of Music-like in quality.
It's fun.
So,
that's a fun one.
Yeah, that one's good. Here's one that I've talked about before on the show, but I highly recommend. And one of our fans actually hunted it down and emailed me and told me that it was the greatest film she's ever seen. Midnight Ballad for Ghost Theater. This one is Korean. It's not available in the US, so you have to actually like get an import and a special player to watch it. But it's such a beautiful story. I keep trying to get Darren Lynn Bousman to remake it. But it's about a little girl whose grandmother disappears into this old rundown theater at the edge of town. So she decides to get a job in the theater, convinced that her grandmother has to be there somewhere because the police have given up hope of looking for her. And she is convinced that, you know, her grandmother's disappearance has something to do with this theater. And what she discovers is that ghosts of film history work or live in the theater. So every night as she's closing up, she meets a different one and they sing to her and tell her about film history. And what she discovers is that they all worked on the same film and that her grandmother was involved in it too. So then she's trying to uncover the mystery of how this film caused her grandmother's disappearance. And it's a really cool little musical.
So that's a great pitch. Like listening to that, I'd watch that, but the title... Whenever you've talked about the title, I've gone, I never want to see that.
I think that it probably sounds a lot better in Korean, but the direct translation is Midnight Ballad for Ghost Theater. And it's so fun and it's kind of like Hugo with a Tim Burton mentality. So it's really cool. Like I would love to remake
it. You're good at this.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, interesting.
And then the other one that I will and Reefer Madness, I told both of them to watch it,
it's
and
great.
nobody did.
I have it still.
But I love Reefer Madness because it takes the campiness of the original movie and is very self-aware about it and makes a movie that ends up being very pro-pot while being anti. So it presents itself as being very anti-marijuana, but the thing is, like, it shows the silliness of anyone who goes against marijuana. And it's very left-wing, which might be why I love it so much. But it's at the same time, the lyrics in it are so smart. The composition's brilliant. And the acting in the movie is beautiful. So the most whack musical I've ever seen is actually the one I was talking about, which is a porn as well. And it's called Underwater Love. And it is about a kappa, which is an Asian monster who's kind of like a turtle. And he falls in love with, he's like a water sprite is the best way I could describe him. And he falls in love with this woman. And it's a musical. And honestly, I can't tell you.
Is it Japanese?
It's Japanese.
Of course it is.
And I can't tell you too much of what's going on, but it is also a porno. I don't think you see anything like truly hardcore, but there's definitely a lot of softcore dry humping going on in that.
Did you ever see, did you ever see that Ray Dennis stickler? The title, Incredibly Strange
mixed up
creatures
who stopped living and became
mixed up zombies.
That's it.
Oh, yeah. It's an interesting film, but it's a musical. But then the songs aren't really like part of the narrative. They're more like breaks, interruptions.
They're kind of non-diegetic.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem with, you could say the same about some of Herschel Gordon Lewis's movies, like Go Girls or something, where it'll stop, or a Russ Meyer thing, you know.
Yeah, you'll stop and get a cool musical.
There's some movies that you wish were like I sometimes think Faster Pussycat Kill would make an amazing musical. Oh, like you know, like it'd be kick ass if somebody could nail that and get the right actresses in it, and you know, it has that right tone. I think it's a tone thing you're looking for, like something to riff off.
Yeah, completely.
What else? What
are movies that you guys would as a musical?
Well, Bat Boy is one. That's an actual stage musical.
Such a great show.
Such a great show. So dark too. It's such a dark musical.
It's really beautiful, but it's like so. Oh, sorry, I love that show so much.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I choreographed it a long time ago, and it's remarkable. And so I would love to see that as a movie version, just because I would love to see what somebody does.
Was that a film at some point?
It's based off the Weekly World News story
of the Bat Boy.
And they made it into a musical. And it's really, I mean, like you think like it's going to be kind of campy and fun, and it has moments of that, but ultimately it's really dark because it's about this boy being taken from the woods and forced to live in this like suburban home when all he wants to do is get back to the woods. And he falls in love with his sister in it, who really isn't really his sister, but she is, and it gets weird.
Well, he's fighting his natural instinct to be a killer, and he's trying not to be, and trying to be a good Christian boy because he's in this like podunk Christian town. It's really like complex and layered. And actually, I'll if I can toss in about this musical, my dad is a theater producer, and that was one of the shows that he produced in New York. And it was so sad about that show because it was doing so well. And that was one of my first experiences, because I saw that show like probably 5 or 6 times. And when it was, doing its initial run, there were people that were coming and like, Rocky Horror style, like were even singing along with it. And it was this big phenomenon. And then 9/11 happened. after it had been open for like 2 months, and then that just killed theater in New York, and nobody saw any shows anymore. And then it sadly shut down. And it's one of those beautiful things. Anytime somebody talks about it, I mean, it's always like they're going, "Oh my God, the show's so amazing." I mean, you should look online and find the soundtrack, because the music even on its own is great.
I could describe some of the songs, like the one where all of the animals, I guess they kind of have an orgy. I'll describe the song as ethereal. It's beautiful.
Yeah, there's a song called "Apology to a Cow" where he's murdered a cow and he's drinking its blood and eating it, and he's sort of awakening his inner feral beast. It's a really fantastic show.
Yeah.
Bat Boy the musical.
Have there been other versions of it post 9/11 and outside of New York?
It's available for like I've seen community theaters do it. And
yeah, you can get the rights and perform it. And I think they did like a short tour maybe. And I think maybe in London they did.
Because I saw a professional tour in DC, and then I later worked with a community theater that was doing it. So I know that rights are available and you can see it various places, but it's one that's never been made into a film that just makes me go, man, it's such a good story. And it's so dark, and it's exactly what you would expect it not to be, because it is this poetic tale of what it's like to be a monster who doesn't want to be a monster. And it's got these Frankenstein overtones. It's beautiful. So yeah, Bat Boy is one that I would definitely want. And then the other musical movie that I've always wanted to make into a musical, and I've mentioned this on the show before, I want to make Street Trash the musical.
That'd be fun.
Dave and I, we already planned out some of the songs. Someday I'm gonna get bored with everything else I'm doing, and I'm gonna be like, you know what? It's time for Street Trash.
That's actually in line
with
Catch the Cock.
That's maybe a good track. Catch the Cock.
That's in line with my pick. If I had a choice, I would turn Basket Case into a musical. Just because.
Oh my gosh,
that I could see. That'd be fun because he would sing. He could be the one who sings every time he comes out.
Exactly. I think it would be hilarious.
Or even Brain Damage, because Elmer actually sings in that.
Pretty much any Frank Henenlotter, because now Frankenhooker would probably.
It seems also, to be honest, like the 80s. It seems like anything in there, because of the way we remember those movies and their tones. Because I was writing things like Return of the Living Dead down. Of course you could turn that into a chopping mall. I was like, I'd love to see a thing set based in a mall with killer robots singing.
What's the one with the Driller Killer? Summer Party Massacre 2?
Oh, yeah. That is a musical.
That would be so good. Dead Alive.
Yeah.
Dead Alive would make a great musical.
I remember when I saw Re-Animator the musical, the first performance, I went home that night. I think it might have been my first tweet using Twitter, and I just remember going, I can't wait for Society the Musical, so you could end with a mass shunting on stage and just have all these bodies and sex. And I think that still would be pretty cool. I could imagine that, but no one would know what it is. No one knows what Society is. So I'm wasted on you plebes.
Yeah, we just got word today that from one of our fans
delayed.
that the Blu-ray release in Europe got delayed.
Yeah, could have been rights. Yeah,
probably.
But so anybody else? So what are your musicals of choice or the movies that you want to see be made into the musicals?
Or vice versa. I don't. Yeah, you mean to turn a movie into a musical rather than a
Phantasm would be pretty cool.
Boy,
how would you do that? Yeah, that makes sense.
Jesse Merlin starring as the tall man in Phantasm the musical.
You're talking.
There we go.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think about it much. but I mean, I like it's fun. It's like it's hard for me because I enjoyed Re-Animator the musical so much. And I haven't seen Evil Dead, but I get the feeling I might enjoy that. Yeah. So I think the live experience, there's a lot I would enjoy.
Do they still do Evil Dead in Vegas?
Yes, they do.
I believe they do.
I've gotten press releases about it.
We should go to Vegas to see Evil Dead. My favorite song in that, by the way, is "What the Fuck Was That," which is when the first girl gets possessed and they Ash shoots her out the door and it's just quiet and they just go, "What the fuck was that?" And they just launch it. It's pretty aming. Yeah.
And what's the other good one for that? My Girlfriend is a Kandarian Demon or something like that.
I think, something like that. I thought it was there's Do the Necronomicon, and I thought it was why does every man I love turn into?
Oh yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
Kandarian Demon or something like that.
I did write down which film I think would make the worst musical.
Okay.
Worst, just absolutely. This is the worst, and probably somebody's already doing it right now. Human Centipede. Imagine trying to sing up someone's ass.
Somebody did.
So awful.
Some college did a musical of it. Yeah, because when we were doing Re-Animator, of course, anytime there was a horror musical, anything, people would post about it. And
right.
Some college did Human Centipede the musical.
Yeah, I don't want to see Human Centipede.
That's terrible. But I'll tell you what, if you go to FEARNET, you should check out the 30-second bunny version of Human Centipede.
Hilarious.
Which is the funniest.
I haven't seen that one, but I like the bunnies. They're great.
It's the funniest bunnies.
The Shining one's great.
just seeing a little bunny go, but I have to shit. It's pretty great. So really quick, since we're on the music theme, I thought it'd be fun to talk really briefly music videos, like horror-based music videos or just stuff like that. I just have a couple of quick examples. Joe Lynch, movie Crip Joe Lynch, he directed a video for A Strapping Young Lad for, I believe the song was called just Love. And it's a complete Evil Dead homage. It's in a cabin. It's got all the same Sam Raimi shots and stuff. So I always thought that was kind of a neat one. I always love when I always got excited as a horror fan when any musicians would do a music video that were based on movies or were meant to homage movies. Other than that, on the way here, I was listening to Nine Inch Nails and Closer came up, and I was reminded that Mark Romanek directed that original Closer video. Sure. Which is really, really, it's just got some weird imagery and stuff that obviously Gus Van Sant used in Psycho.
Who did, oh yeah, that's true. Who did the Tool, the one we were talking about before with the claymation? Do you know which artist? Because he probably might have been a feature filmmaker.
I feel like the guitarist Adam Jones directs their videos because he's actually a fairly successful effects artist.
Right.
Outside of Tool, if I'm not mistaken.
That was definitely one of the first ones I remember. It was very visceral and just otherworldly.
I always thought that it was in some way related to the Quay brothers, just because they were doing that kind of
you're right. It looks a lot like that, actually.
Maybe, that one I wasn't prepped on.
Yeah, I don't know that one, so that was just me going, they kind of look the
No,
same.
they definitely didn't do it, but it looks exactly like their kind of work, for sure. Like.
Yeah. Mark Romanek also did another Nine Inch Nails video for Perfect Drug, which is a very like Shining-esque homage. Like it's got the whole like the snow maze and everything like that. And then on a side note, David Bowie, who I love, he did a video called Heart's Filthy Lesson, which seems like almost a sequel to Closer. It was around that period where he was touring with Nine Inch Nails a lot. Yeah. And it was actually directed by Sam Bayer, who unfortunately did the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Oh. But before that, he did
That's right, because he was a music video guy. He did Nirvana Teen Spirit.
Teen Spirit, one of my favorite videos of all time. But he did one for Heart's Filthy Lesson by David Bowie, which I think is cool. And last but not least for me, it's not really horror. It's just a cool music video, and I want any chance I get to pimp it. There's this band in the early 2000s called My Vitriol, and they're kind of a cross between like Foo Fighters and Deftones. I think Chino from the Deftones once said that it was like his favorite band. But they have a song called Grounded. And it was the story. It's like kind of a mini movie to the song, but it's written, directed, and stars Vincent Gallo. And it's just this odd thing.
He's a good musician. People make fun of him a lot, but his albums, I love every album he's recorded or soundtrack he's done. They're great.
I've never heard his music.
All the soundtracks of all his films. He's a really good musician.
You want me to buy you one of his T-shirts that says
Is there?
Vincent Gallo? All over his website, they say like Vincent Gallo's T-shirt, and it's just a white T-shirt.
I mean, I haven't told many people, but I did purchase his sperm for my wife.
Oh,
and
really?
So that's why when you say my kid has great curls, Vincent Gallo's sperm.
Vincent Gallo's sperm.
$500,000 well spent. I'll tell you that much. Yeah. He's a good musician. I mean, like a lot of these people, if they stuck to one thing, it'd probably do better.
It's a neat video. It's the band's My Vitriol is called Grounded. Look it up on YouTube. It's essentially, Vincent Gallo wakes up in front of a diner and in the whole video during the song. And it's weird because the music keeps stopping for him to do dialogue. So he gets up and there's nobody anywhere. He goes into the diner. There's like coffee cups still there, but he can't find anybody. And then he gets in the car and he's driving around. He's trying to get out of this abandoned town. And then something happens where he kind of has like this accident and he's in a loop and he wakes up exactly in the same spot, face down in front of the diner.
Who made it?
It's him, I think. I think he directed it as well. Yeah. But it's really cool. I like those
So
weird...
it opens with a 3-minute credit sequence saying written, produced, directed by Vincent Gallo. The trailer, go watch the trailer to Buffalo 66, which is a great movie. Yeah, but the trailer to that should be burned in the fire ashes of hell because it's just like the craziest ego you've ever seen. Yeah. And it must have been part of creating an identity, because I can't believe anyone would do that for real. But
I think I saw it at the Sam family and laughed.
It's just crazy. It says written by Vincent Gallo, directed by, produced by, starring, and you're just like, really? It's crazy. But
anybody else got music videos?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple. There was one that came out. I was still in high school when it came out, but it was called Rubber Johnny. And it was from the Apex Twins. And I think it was directed by Chris, hold on, give me 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Chris Cunningham?
Yeah, it's Chris Cunningham.
Okay, he did a couple of the Alien films. But
scary as hell.
Yeah, it was scary as hell just because it was like this little creature in a wheelchair kind of running around in the dark. Or, I don't even know if it was a wheelchair. I remember wheels in it, though.
You know what? It reminded me of a creature almost for like the creature in the Wreck movies.
Yeah,
then the top room, the long... It had a feeling like, oh my God, is that real? Like you're watching the music video and kind of shocked. shocked.
And I mean, Rob said when I mentioned it before, he was like, all Apex Twins videos scared me.
Yeah, because don't they always like put his face on everybody?
They do. Yeah. I mean, this one I remember particularly just because the whole, and it may have been a short, but I remember music in it. But the whole, I have to go back and watch it now, but the whole thing was pretty much just this creature running around with these eyes. And I remember the eyes, and I just remember the movements creeped me out. So there's that one. And then a couple of really cool horror nods that I saw in music videos. Avenged Sevenfold in their video Nightmare. It's kind of a really strong homage to Jacob's Ladder, specifically that scene where he's trapped in the really gross mental institution and they're wheeling the gurney down and he's seeing all this like weird fucked up shit as he's passing, and then he gets in the surgeons and everything. It's pretty much that scene recreated in a music video. And it's great. I mean, it's obviously a really strong nod to it. And then one of them was actually sent by a fan this week. He sent us the link to Devil Driver, and they have a song which is talking, which is obviously mimicking a movie that Elric talked about last week, Vi. And it's literally priests and one stuck in the room with this coffin and this girl in like the flower crown, and she comes back to life. Oh, cool. And it's really, it makes it scary. Like in the original Vi, when the girl comes back to life in the coffin, it's more kind of comedic. Right. This one, it's like scary as shit. So it's a really cool video. And then also, you guys were talking about Tool. Maynard James Keenan has another band called Pucifer that I love, and they have this song called Queen Bee. And it's not exactly horror, but the video is it's two devil women, and they've got all these men that they're using as chess pawns, and it's the two of them playing chess with each other, but they're the actual pieces. And it's a really cool setup. So I always liked that one for kind of the devil tones to it.
Right on.
I really, when I think of scary music videos, my absolute scariest one is Black Hole Sun.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's so freaky.
That's looked like Lynch directed that, right?
Yeah.
It looks like, I
mean, I remember when I saw that, come on MTV whenever it came out, and I just absolutely was terrified. I was more terrified of that than, any horror movie I was watching at the time.
I'm looking up who
the
directed
facial
it.
contortions.
Yeah, I mean, it was and all the crazy claymation. It was like Large Marge times 1,000. It's crazy. That, and then Bark at the Moon, the Bark at the Moon music video, or Ozzy, it's like werewolves and mad scientists, and that's a classic. And then I was thinking, it's not exactly horror, but there's a definite big Metropolis vibe to the Radio Gaga Queen music video.
Oh, yeah,
never seen that. It's a great music video, and it's totally taken from Metropolis, and it's cool dancing in that. I don't know. I love Queen.
Were there any, when we were talking about musical horror films, were there any that we didn't touch on that you were particularly into? I feel like we might have skipped you.
Oh, no. I mean, we touched on most of them. I mean, Carrie the Musical is, of course, a very famous flop that happened on Broadway.
Did you
Twice,
see it?
Right? Didn't they try to remount it recently?
I think they've tried to do it a few times, and it's just kind of, sadly, it never worked. But I don't know. I think we covered most of the bases.
And I haven't seen it, obviously, but the De Palma one, has that ever been done on stage, Phantom of Paradise?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think you could, because they're so, I mean, like, it was made for a movie. It changes sets like every 5 minutes.
Okay, interesting.
You'd have to go all like Julie Taymor, Lion King.
I hope I can see it before next week, so we can
it's
follow
very
up.
cinematic.
I'm excited now.
It's a great movie.
Well, cool. That's musicals.
Yeah, I kind of want to. I do want to kind of go. We'll circle back into Almost Human, because it's still available, and it's again what we were talking about, kind of regional filmmaking. It's like a couple friends went back home after working in the industry and made their film. We had Joe and Josh on before, but I'm also curious about you as an actor, because going from something that's kind of a broad performance that you have to give for, say, musical, like Re-Animator, the musical, to then you dial it back a lot, for this film. Had you done many other films before this, or was this your first real lead?
This was my first, real lead in a film. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I did one very little known movie that was at Sundance, but I was in like 6th grade.
Oh, wow.
It was a long time ago.
Cool.
Called Late Bloomers. Fun little movie about gay marriage.
Oh, wow.
But this is my first real lead, and I had done a few shorts, but it's definitely a very sort of different beast, than live stage stuff. And when I was looking at the script for Almost Human, I mean, my character Seth, basically has, PTSD, and he's like sort of numb to the world. And so, and I knew that was what Joe was going for. And so I made the choice to, this guy just doesn't show emotion. He doesn't even have it. He doesn't feel anything. And then slowly, you know, as the shit starts to hit the fan and as things start to really go downhill, I mean, you know, this poor guy, he is clocking into work at 3 p.m. and by 8, he's like slaughtering monsters in the woods, you know? So I thought, well, this is about a guy who is, you know, quickly finding himself in a situation totally out of control. And how would I react to that if I were in this situation? Well, I'd be pretty terrified, and I'd be totally unsure of what to do, and I'd be stumbling my way to victory however I could. You know, so I wanted to bring that. And, you know, I mean, I love the Evil Dead films. Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorites. And I think what is so great about Bruce Campbell in those is that he is this guy that he becomes a hero. You know, he's not, I mean, you know, obviously, like, this is a totally different thing, but, you know, Big Trouble in Little China, you know, Kurt Russell, he's a hero, you know, right. That's who he is. Not so with Ash. And I wanted to bring that with Seth. You know, Seth is not a hero. He doesn't even want to be involved with any of this shit anymore, but it's thrust upon him and he has to step up. And I think that's what makes, you know, exciting horror movies, is when you see somebody that's not equipped to deal with a problem, that has to deal with this really terrible problem.
Did they shoot all out of order, which I like most films, or?
Yeah.
I know sometimes some indies can afford to shoot, you know, consecutive.
Yeah, I mean, we would shoot like chunks of the film in order, you know, and you know, like I think the first day of shooting was, you know, if you see the film, the first 10 minutes is sort of like a you know, a flashback, like a prequel to the action, and then it starts in the day that the film takes place in. So I think our first day of shooting was the first shot of that day to start the day, and then we kind of would jump around some, and you know, so we got to do a little bit of it in order, which was helpful, but it was largely based on what was available and where we were shooting. And
because that must be one of the biggest challenges to actors who come from theater or in any capacity. It's just like going from doing this thing every day in order chronologically to suddenly, now we're going to do your last scene. I know a film AJ had worked on it. I think they did the first scene they did of the whole film was the final moment. And even as a filmmaker, that's intimidating to me. Just like, oh geez, you have to start at that end point. It's
I mean, you know, it's I just found myself really doing a lot of homework beforehand and making sure that I knew every day walking in, you know, because the night before, you know, I'd go through my script and I'd essentially read through the script and go, where am I right now? Where am I coming from? What just happened? You know, because they worry about continuity and all of that, but you've got to get in that mindset of what's just happened a few hours before. And so, you know, it's a challenge, but it's a fun challenge to go through, and definitely rewarding.
Were you an alien abduction film fan? Have you seen Communion?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Communion, you know, terrifies me. Fire in the skies. But, you know, when you think about it, there aren't, and this is something, there aren't a lot of alien abduction movies, which is really kind of surprising.
It's more like, I think it's more of something that infiltrated television.
Yeah.
And like reality television. Yeah. You know, it'd be a flashback and the cows come. The most interesting is the one that I just forced Bill Lustig to re-release, God Told Me to, which I almost didn't even want to admit that right now because people haven't seen it. That's partly the weird vibe.
The big twist.
Yeah, halfway through it takes a very different turn. It starts as a shooter movie in New York City, and then suddenly there's UFOs and abductions, and you're like, holy hell, where is this movie going? But it's got an amazing abduction sequence.
Called God Told Me So?
God Told Me To.
Andy Kaufman's in it.
Yeah,
wow. It's weird.
It's an out there movie. But
you know what? Another alien abduction movie that's great is Extra.
I love
she likes it. Yeah, she's
I love Extra. I hadn't seen it until like 2 years ago. It was playing at the Cine Family, and Joe Begas convinced me to go, and my life hasn't been the same.
It's wonderful.
That must be fun too, because you're making films with people you've become friends with, but they're also, you know, horror cinephile types, so they must be throwing new films at you. Were there other films that they made you watch before the film that kind of were exciting?
Well, it was more. It wasn't so much like, you know, movies that we had. You know, that it was like, do this as homework or something. Right. But I mean, they introduced me to Inside, the amazing French horror film, which just blew my mind. It was through him that I saw a Serbian film, which I'd heard about, and actually, which I really, I hate to use the word like, but I like that movie. Yeah. I think it's
Bekah does too. She liked it a lot, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to think what else. let's see, Castle Freak. I had never seen Castle Freak.
Yes.
Which is just wonderful. You got to see, Stuart Gordon. One thing about Stuart Gordon is he never makes a boring movie.
Yeah.
Like his movies are always totally out there and totally surprising, and Castle Freak is one of those.
Yeah. Full Moon just put out the Blu-ray of that, which I picked up along with Pit and the Pendulum.
You know, the one thing about that movie that always drives me crazy is that they have the monster's face on the cover.
Yeah.
I always thought, the whole point of that movie is that it's like, what's the monster look like? And then the DVD cover is like a giant picture of the
lurking.
face.
Yeah. When after they now obviously you guys are making with no expectations of where it's going to be picked up. It ended up being IFC Midnight, which is a great festival run for the budget. When after that point, did you guys think about continuing that storyline? Because it felt like it really did, because it's a first film. It's very lean. It's like 80 minutes or whatever. So you feel like it could pick up. I remember my only complaint. I remember saying to you when I saw you, it's like I want another 20 minutes of you going crazy at the end. You know what I mean? Just running around by yourself. But that's the Evil Dead 2 vibe coming through, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he. I know Joe's talked about definitely being into doing a sequel if that ends up happening, and I know he's talked a lot about it being sort of. Taking place in the hospital,
cool.
And so sort of being Halloween 2 meets Aliens,
right? That's pretty
funny. And so he's talked about that, I know he's got a few other film ideas that he's working on right now, which I would love to be involved in because he's awesome to work with. Yeah.
So, what in holy hell is Space Clown?
What is Space Clown?
I looked at your IMDb before I came here, and all I saw under your name was Space Clown.
So, okay, last year I set out I was like, okay, I want to, because I'd made a short and I was going, I want to see if I can make a feature film, and I have zero money to make it. So what am I going to do? And so I sat down and said, well, okay, I think I know there's sort of very divisive opinions about found footage movies. I like them. I think they can be effective. And I think there's also a reason that they get made is because they're cheap and they're very forgiving to first-time filmmakers. So I said, all right, I can do a found footage movie. It'll be forgiving lighting. I don't know anything about lighting. I don't know anything about sound. But I don't want to just do another, there's a ghost somewhere and I don't know. I was saying, what if I want to do something. What's the most absolute ridiculous monster that I can put in a found footage movie? I thought, well, a clown from outer space.
Right.
And so I made this movie, which and the whole goal behind this being I wanted to do everything myself and learn how to do it and teach myself editing and see what happened. So I'm a year into, post-production on this thing, but I'm still working on it. And it's essentially about me at home alone one night when a space clown appears in my guest house and converts it into a circus tent spaceship. And so I went in and I built a whole circus tent set.
This doesn't sound like a low budget movie. This sounds like you had money.
And I swear to God, we didn't. I mean, it was like clip lights from Home Depot and fabric that we borrowed from somebody and ripped to shreds and like confetti and old carpet we found. And, it's crazy. And I'm friends with the folks that run the LA Haunted Hayride, which if you haven't been, it's such a great haunted attraction. I love it. And they came out and they helped me with the clown design. I can show you guys pictures of the clown. We filmed it and I'm editing and putting the whole thing together, and it's very silly and not to be taken seriously.
I love that you did it in that vein to teach yourself a new skill.
What did you send me? Was it like a trailer? Or
I sent you a little trailer I cut together. Yeah.
I want to see it. It sounds fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's very, very silly.
All right, Space Clown.
Space Clown.
Jeffrey Combs is envious he didn't get to be the Space Clown.
That'll be for the sequel. I have a whole trilogy planned. It'll be
wow.
Nice.
And so, what are you working on other things now? Because Almost Human must have helped get you other film roles, right?
Yeah, definitely. I just wrapped a film called Friends Effing Friends Effing Friends that is written and directed. Actually, there's a horror connection here. It's not a horror movie, but there's a horror connection. It's written and directed by this guy Quincy Rose, who is the son of Mickey Rose, who you may know as the writer-director from Student Bodies.
Oh, I love Student Bodies.
Yeah. So his son wrote and directed this film, Friends Effing Friends Effing Friends, which I was in with Tyler Dawson from Bellflower.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really fun. It's sort of a very dark, romantic comedy, kind of. I don't know. It's not even I say romantic comedy, and you have all these ideas in your head of what that means.
With that title?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, and I'm a total asshole in it. Yeah, then I'm working on a few other projects. I'm working on this project Dementia, which is a horror film with Gene Jones coming up, and I'm working.
Oh, okay, that was the one just announced with AJ and two people from the Sacrament.
Yeah, Gene Jones,
Christina Klebe.
Yeah, so I'm doing that. And
what kind of tone is that? Is it a straight horror film or is it?
It's like a psychological horror film.
Okay.
I have a very small part in it, but I'm excited about that. And then I'm working on a project with Jackson Stewart called The Hollywood Reboot. Which we're hoping to film coming up in the spring, and that's really awesome. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff going on. I'm very excited.
There's a really fun comedy show. I don't think they've released it yet that we're hoping to play next month called Sex Boss.
Yes,
that they made, and
that's
you
Jackson
and
Stewart, right?
Yeah, you and Jesse Merlin are both in it, and very funny. Jesse Merlin terrifies me in that film.
He's a terrifying human being.
Yeah,
but
it's pretty disturbing. And Cartridge Family, we'd seen that short, which you did a great job on that too.
That's online now, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Cartridge Family. Yeah, the Cartridge Family is online. Me and AJ Bowen, and that's really fun. I want to make more of those. They keep talking about making more episodes of that.
It did feel like something that should have had a successful Kickstarter to keep it going. You know, because web series usually are just kind of, I don't know. Often someone, I made a web series, and you see it, and it's just like, it's just a short that you cut up and put it on the web. But that felt like something that would be perfect for the online geek culture, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was well received. I know, you never know with these things. We
screened it, it was cool. Yeah. It was good stuff.
All righty.
Well, I feel like we could go out with a musical song.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? I don't want to.
I have a couple of plugs before we head out.
Yeah, did you want to do anything about this contest, or did you come completely unprepared, Elric?
Our book contest?
Well, yes.
I think.
You promised
unless you want to pick out a name. Yeah, well.
Do it on Facebook.
Yeah, I think we'll do it tomorrow on Facebook. My promises are shit.
I'm going to mail the Night of the Demons.
Yes, she's going to mail you J. Michael Kober.
Is never within like 5 miles of a post office and can't figure out how to work the machine.
Ever since Bukowski stopped working there, I don't even go to the post office anymore. You know,
so
research it.
Yeah.
He was a famous American writer from the. But yeah, we also have a Lance Henriksen, Joe Maddrey comic graphic novel that we'll be putting up in a couple days.
Yep.
I had a Maniac Cop 3 that I was thinking about letting roll.
Why, really?
Ooh. Well, after the Lustig one, and we got a lot of good feedback on the Lustig episode.
Yeah, it was a great episode.
You know, some great stories. We I think we are also getting to the point where it'd be good to hear what kind of themes and topics people, because we do 50-something episodes in.
Yeah.
Topics are going to run things. There's some I'd like to revisit, like Slasher and things that we.
Yeah. You weren't here for some.
I wasn't here for that, and there's so many things. What would you like to come back for?
Oh, I don't know. Clown movies could be fun.
Oh, yeah. We'll get you and the Kyoto brothers.
Movies.
Yeah, there we go.
We can get the Kyotos.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do that.
That's an awfully fun.
Is that remake happening? Haven't they been talking about
that? It's been going on for like 5 years.
Yeah.
So,
I love that.
They should just slap their name on your movie and call it a...
There we go. There we go. If you're listening, Stephen Kyoto.
We also have some video game codes that we're going to be giving away in a couple of weeks for, it's a blood werewolf or something like that. It was... they were gifted to us by Devin Faraci, so we will be putting those up in a couple of weeks.
Monsterpalooza this weekend, which is going to be fun. Jump Cut's got the 3. We've got the Carpenter, The Fog playing on Friday, The Vamp on Saturday, and Hellraiser on Sunday. So should all be fun.
Bekah's film on Friday before Vamp.
Yes.
Wait, when's Vamp? On Friday or Saturday?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is Saturday.
Yeah, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
and in case you can't make it down to Jump Cut, I am going to be at the Twisted Terror Con in Sacramento. So if you swing by that, I will be there at the Fango booth and doing all types of stuff. And they're showing a couple of my films there. So definitely come check it out. It should be fun. And I also just got booked at the Stanley Film Festival.
Oh, cool.
Which I am so freaking psyched about. That is the one that is at the actual hotel that they shot The Shining at.
So exciting.
Kubrick stayed in to write
I've never been jealous of anything you've ever said until now. I've always just been like, well, she talks about liking musicals. And, no, but that truly is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty psyched about that. And they've already started releasing some of the films, and I've learned some that they haven't announced yet. It's going to be fucking awesome.
Is it mostly a film festival? Is that what it is?
Well, it's a lot of things because apparently last year was their first year, and last year was mostly a film festival. But the films that they show there, they get from like Tribeca and Styges. So they're like really, really top-notch horror films. And so this year they're doing the same thing. They're bringing in these top-notch horror films, just the best of the best for the year. But they're trying to add in other elements as well. So the reason that I'm going is they've brought us in to do the trivia night.
Right.
But I also know they're doing a horror-themed murder mystery dinner, which I'm kind of psyched about. And then the one that I'm really interested in is they are doing kind of an all full immersion horror film where you actually become part of a horror film for the weekend. And apparently you have to sign up in advance because they like research you so that they know your background. And it like integrates.
It's called the game.
Like the game.
It's David Fincher directing.
And it integrates into your real life, but you just go through the thing as normal. Like you go to the festival as normal and the horror will be integrated into what you do. It sounds
Somebody's going to get killed.
Yeah.
Somebody's dying.
Somebody dies.
This is going to be a bad. I'm glad I'm not going there now.
Yeah.
Now
And they actually get murdered by Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that happens. And they've got all these other things that they're announcing. So it just sounds like one hell of a crazy weekend. And again, this is the hotel from The Shining. So it's like it's up and it's isolated. So everything takes place at the hotel.
So it's
and
the
you
exterior
stay at the hotel
of The Shining, right? It's a thing you see in the exterior because there was no interior, right?
There was no
the interior was
This
in
is the
England.
exterior.
And, that's cool.
But it's the hotel that Kubrick stayed in when he
or Stephen King was inspired.
It was the hotel that King
yeah.
stayed in when he wrote it.
Interesting.
And they ended up using the
Does he come?
exteriors.
Does Stephen King?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Interesting.
But,
I don't think he was there last year, but you never know.
so
Steve, are you listening?
Steve, are you listening?
I'm pretty psyched. So yeah.
Well, we do have another Stephen King connection coming up in a couple episodes, right?
We haven't done a Stephen King show yet.
Mick Harris is coming in to do a Stephen King episode.
In 2 episodes, I believe.
2 or 3.
And then have we come up with our theme for next week?
No, next week we've got what's in
Adam
April?
Girash
Adam Girash is coming
Ashlyn Lenny.
we're going to talk to them about Schism and
which is called
Fractured. Yeah. Well, originally, because he was going to come in with Jason, we were going to do screenwriting because we haven't really tackled the whole writing process. But I don't know. We'll see.
This is kind of a head trip, like psychotropic movie.
Yeah.
Might not be a bad week to do trippy films.
It's good stuff. Yeah.
I gave it like my best review of the year.
I say I'm calling now. Let's do Mindfucks.
Mindfucks.
Our genre Mindfucks.
Because
that's probably my favorite subgenre, to be honest.
It's a total mindfuck, which is why I loved it, because those are some of my favorite types of films, and I just loved what they did with it because the whole thing was like a mindfuck.
Yeah. So, all right, let's do that then.
Mindfucks it is. Let's do it.
Yay! All right. So that's next week.
Let's just make sure we know where we can see Almost Human, because is it any theatrical anymore?
I'm not sure about theatrical anymore, but it's on VOD everywhere. So, you know, Hulu, Amazon Instant, PS3, Xbox, your local DirecTV provider, all that stuff.
But watch it with a few people. It feels to me like it's a crowd. It reminds me of like how Evil Dead and stuff feel. It's a fun movie regardless, but definitely with a case of beer and a few friends, it's a really fun night. Yeah, I think it's great.
And your Twitter handle is
at Graham Skipper.
There you go.
Well, I guess Graham Skipper. No, really have to say the ad. Graham Skipper.
Follow him.
Follow me.
Follow
Thank you.
us.
And thanks as always. And
we'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll still be here.
Woohoo!
Boom.
Thank
see
you
in
guys.
Texas.
Vote for us on the Rondo Awards.
Oh, that's right. And Graham, write and vote for something.
Write and vote.
Whatever. Just write Graham, whatever.
Best nude scene.
Oh, we didn't get to talk about the reaction shot. Oh, well. Go watch the movie and then we'll talk about the reaction shot.
Yes.
Tweet at me once you see that film and we'll discuss the best reaction shot of 2013/14 in movies, because there's a story behind it, but it would be ruined if...
Yes.
You can read about it in Fangoria.
Yes.
I wrote the article.
Yes. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.